2026, and the time is 6 p.m. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Foster, please lead us off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
David Jockman.
Here.
Jacob Williams.
Here.
Alex Velto.
Here.
Christina Del Villar.
Here.
Tina Gonfiantini.
Here.
Sean McCoy.
Here.
Manny Becerra.
Here.
We have a quorum of the Reno City.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I'll send it right back to you for A3, public comment.
It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you're called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there's disruptive behavior, and you'll be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. We did receive correspondence for this item that were general in nature and not specific to any items on this agenda. These were forwarded to the Planning Commission and have been entered into the record. With that, I have not received any requests to speak forms in person, and we do not have any attendees online with their hand raised.
Okay, that concludes public comment. We will now move on to item A4, approval of the agenda for our meeting tonight, August 5th, 2026.
Commissioner Williams, motion to approve.
Commissioner Gonfiantini, second.
And before we take this vote, I will note that we will be taking item E1 out of order tonight. We have also a request to pull the item from consent agenda. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item A5, approval of a minutes. This is from our July 15th, 2026 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Commissioner Williams, second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I was not I was not here, so I abstain.
I abstain as well. So that is 5 in favor with 2 abstentions from Commissioners Del Villar and Jockman.
And Commissioner Becerra abstains.
My apologies. 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 abstentions, adding Becerra to that list.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item B, staff announcements. Mr. Raley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple quick announcements. As I mentioned at our last meeting, the North Hills Townhomes project was appealed to City Council. That was heard on the 29th, and Council did uphold the recommendation of the Planning Commission with the added condition that the applicant work with RTC on a regional road impact fee agreement to explore the possibility of the installation of a traffic light at North Hills Boulevard and Beckworth Drive. Next week, they will consider the One Micah Place zoning and map amendment that this Commission recommended approval on last month.
Thank you very much. We will now move on out of order to item E1. This is a presentation and discussion on the C-Tax. This is for discussion only. There will be no motion on this item tonight. For this item, we will hear a presentation from staff.
All right. Good evening, Planning Commission. Thanks for having me. My name is Jason Gortari, and I'm the urban economist here at the city in the Office of Policy and Strategy. And tonight we're going to be giving you an introduction to C-Tax. You might be wondering, why are we talking about taxes at our Planning Commission? Well, this is a presentation that's part of the city's broader revenue education campaign. We're going to each board and commission and helping the community understand how our taxes work, where we get the money from, and how they're distributed. So with that, we'll get started. What is C-Tax? So C-Tax is shorthand for the consolidated tax. It was created back in 1997, and it takes 6 different revenue sources and puts them in one pot and distributes them to local governments and districts. C-Tax is governed by the Nevada Department of Taxation, and each tax has unique distribution rules and formulas. So C-tax has its roots dating back long before 1997. Many of the revenue sources existed in the early 70s and 80s. The last new revenue source came about during the tax shift, where the state lowered property taxes and had to subsidize local governments with another tax source, and they added another piece of sales tax to offset that revenue that would be foregone. Another important item on this slide is the last time the formula was adjusted was in 2013, and they made slight modifications to provide more stability in the formula. So some quick true and false. Local governments receive all the tax revenue from the various components. This is false. Large percentages go to a variety of state and county programs. They don't all go to the C-tax bucket. If you buy something in Washoe County, the sales tax revenue comes back to the county, and this is generally true. If it's purchased within our county borders, generally that money is being returned to the cities and local governments within Washoe. However, this is where the formula gets different. C-tax doesn't stay in the city where you purchased it. So if you get a hammer from Home Depot in Reno, not all of that sales tax revenue from C-tax is coming back to Reno. And that's really kind of where we're going to dive into during this presentation. So why do local governments care about C-tax? Well, it's the largest source at the city's general fund budget, accounting for about 31% and about 100 million. At Sparks, it's the second largest at 35%. And then at the county level, it's consistently the second largest, accounting for about 30% of their budget. Their largest contributor is property tax. So why should you care about C-tax? It funds a lot of the essential services that we rely on and deserve, such as police, fire, parks, dispatch. It also funds a variety of county services that we rely on, such as public health services, senior services, homelessness, marriage license, etc. So what are the components of C-tax? And during this section, we kind of like to relate this to making a bowl of stew or soup, what have you. You take these 6 ingredients, you make your soup, and then it gets fed out to the local government. So our 6 taxes are the liquor tax, cigarette tax, governmental service tax, real property transfer tax, and then our 2 pieces of sales tax, the basic city-county relief tax and the supplemental city-county relief tax. So the liquor tax, this is a tax paid by the wholesalers with liquor of over 22% alcohol content. There's actually lower rates for different types of alcohol that go, and all those proceeds go to the state general fund. C-tax only gets the piece from 22% and over alcohol. That rate's $3.60, and of that $3.60, 50 cents goes into the C-tax bucket, or about 14%, with the lion's share going to the state general fund. What's interesting about this tax is it's not indexed, and it's on a per gallon basis, so it stays pretty flat. Next, we have cigarette tax, and this is a tax paid on each pack of cigarettes. Nevada is actually a cigarette stamp tax state, so each cigarette pack has a stamp affixated to it, and the piece that goes to C-tax is based on those stamps. It doesn't include the other product tobacco tax, which includes your nicotine pouches, your nicotine products, cigars, chewing tobacco. The only piece that goes into the C-tax formula is that cigarette tax stamp, and the rate for that is $1.80 for a pack of 20. And yet, the C-tax only gets 10 cents, or about 6% of that $1.80, with the lion's share, once again, going to the state general fund. Next, we have the governmental service tax, and this is a tax that you pay each year when you register your vehicle. It's not your registration fee, it's just another line item of tax on your bill. The rate's 4 cents per dollar of vehicle value, and it has a depreciation factor in it. C-tax gets about half of this revenue, with the remainder of it going to a variety of state services. Next, we have the real property transfer tax, and this is a tax paid by the buyer or seller when you sell your home. It's $2.05 per $500 of the sales price in Washoe County. And C-tax gets about a third of this, with, once again, most of it going to the state general fund. and then some going to the state affordable housing program, and then a little bit as an optional tax going to the county and being distributed to all the entities in the county. Now we have our first piece of sales tax. This is the basic city county relief tax. So if you buy something in Washoe County that's taxable, you pay 8.265, and this is that 0.5% that goes in the C-tax bucket. So if you think of it as a transaction by a $100 item, 50 cents is going to that C-tax bucket. The larger piece is the supplemental city county relief tax. And this rate is 1.75, so on a $100 transaction, $1.75 is going in the bucket. So you add those two together, the 50 cents plus the 175 on $100, about 225 is going to the city tax bucket for all local governments. This slide just kind of shows in Nevada, while there's a lot of taxable items such as auto parts, cleaning supplies, clothes, there's also a lot of exempt items such as digital goods, diapers that just went recently exempt in January of 2025. Most professional services, so like dental services. If you get your teeth cleaned, you pay a dental fee, but you're not paying sales tax. So a lot of things in the state that are exempt from sales tax. So how do individual tax components contribute to C-tax? And since sales tax is such an important component of C-tax, we're going to spend a few slides discussing sales tax. In FY25, the entire C-tax bucket, more than 80% was made up of sales tax. And that's the big blue box and the big yellow box. So think of that as like your broth when you're making your soup. The governmental service tax is 11%, maybe the meat. Real property transfer tax, 2%, maybe that's your carrots. And then cigarette and liquor tax are pretty much like your spices. They're less than 0.5% of the total 2.2 billion that was available for all local governments. This just shows consistently over time, sales tax has been the main contributor, both in that big statewide bucket, and then in our Washoe bucket, it's been well over 80% as well. Looking at the Washoe County sales tax rate, here's all the components that make up that 8.265. More than half goes back to the state, 2% to the state general fund. Local school support tax goes to the state education fund to fund K through 12 schools. Then you have your two pieces of sales tax, and this counts for about 30% of that 8.265. All the items in purple or above the dashed line are the statewide minimum. This tax of 6.85% is levied in every county. Everything below is what's known as a local optional tax, and these are more specific to Washoe County. To be fair, we highlighted the two pieces of sales tax that Reno gets a piece of. For the Local Government Tax Act, we get 16% of that optional tax. And then the railroad grade project goes to pay off debt on our railroad tracks. So that is kind of passed through the city of Reno to pay the debt on the tracks. So how is C-tax distributed from local to local governments and districts? So step one is taking that big state bucket of stew and distributing it to the counties fairly. Counties don't get to eat the soup at this point. They're just distributing it. And then in step two, you take those county buckets and then feed them out to the local governments that receive C-tax. So we'll first start with step one. Liquor tax, 3.7 million for all local governments statewide that receive C-tax. It's approximately 160 different entities. This revenue source is distributed based on population. Doesn't matter where the liquor is sold. It's just what your county's share of the statewide total is what you get. In FY25, we got about 15.7%. Same with the cigarette tax, not a lot, 7 million. Population distributed, Washoe got 1 million or about 16%. Governmental service tax, this is a point of origin tax, and these are the ones that we like. So if you register your car in Reno, the portion attributable to C-Tax all comes back to our Washoe soup bucket. And as you can see, we got a little bit richer share of 18%, rather than if it were just population, it'd be closer to the 16. Real property transfer tax, this is another one that's point of origin. So if you sell your home in Washoe County, that C-Tax portion goes all to our county bucket. Basic city county relief tax. It's interesting, they split up sales tax differently in the C-Tax formula. So for this one, it's point of origin. You buy a hammer at Home Depot for $100. It's a nice hammer. 50 cents goes to our Washoe bucket. Supplemental city county relief tax. This is by far the largest piece, and this one has a little bit different of a formula. This is where the concept of guaranteed counties gets introduced and non-guaranteed counties. Guaranteed counties are your smaller counties, and they get a fixed amount regardless of how much sales tax they actually generate. The 5 in FY25 are Esmeralda, Lander, Lincoln, Mineral, and Pershing County. When C-Tax was first created, there was actually 11. So if you generate enough sales tax on your own, you can graduate out of this bucket and start and become a guaranteed county or non-guaranteed county like Washoe is. And the non-guaranteed counties their formula is mainly based on what you generate in your county as a percent of the statewide total. So in FY25, Washoe got about 14% of that 1.5 billion. So you put it all together, you have your 6 soup ingredients, your $2.2 billion in stew, and then by the time it gets to Washoe County, the region, no soup's being eaten yet, we got 14.5% of the pot, or about 321 million. So now moving on to step 2. There's no more crossing over of buckets. We now determine how that bucket Washoe is split up. And if we thought C-Tax was complicated already, there's yet another formula and more concepts of enterprise districts and then everyone else. Enterprise districts get a fixed amount off the top. It's a really small amount. What's interesting is this amount is fixed in statute, so it hasn't changed since 1997, and it won't change unless the law changes. So after they get their cut off the top, then the local governments and special districts are fed. And their revenue gets split up monthly based on 2 different formulas, which are known as base and excess. So base is determined each year, and it's what you got last year, adjusted for the 5-year average inflation, and that's your new monthly amount that you expect to get. If the revenue actually comes in lower than that base amount, it's just split up based on your base's share of total. So if our base amount in Reno is 3 million per se, and our bucket is 10 million, we would get 30% of anything that's less than that. So what happens if there's excess revenue? So if there's excess revenue, there's another formula to reward entities for growth. This growth formula incorporates population growth, assessed value growth, and then everyone gets a plus 2% in their growth factor. This is a lot of numbers, but if you're interested in walking through an example, we put together this slide just so you can follow the math to see how an excess distribution month would work. So you put that all together, we start with 321 million, and by the time it gets to Reno, we get about 31%. And this distribution rate hasn't changed more than like 100% over the last almost 30 years now. So generally, Washoe County is getting 51% of the pot, Reno's getting 31%, Sparks is getting 12, special districts are getting 6. This slide just shows you what enterprise districts and special districts are in our county and what populations they serve. So our enterprise districts serve a little bit of everyone. Verd ITV has some incorporated Reno residents and unincorporated Washoe residents, but mainly this amount of money is going to serve unincorporated residents, primarily through our fire districts. Together, North Lake Tahoe Protection District and Truckee Meadows Fire Protection get about 15 million. So it's pretty significant. looking at some real-world examples. So if you buy a $50 bottle of liquor, $1.66 is paid in liquor tax. About 3/4 goes to the state, quarter goes to the city tax formula. This one's split up based on population, so we get about 16% of that. And by the time it gets to Reno, we only get 1 penny. So 1 penny off of a $50 bottle of liquor. Cigarette carton. So say you buy a $80 carton, $18 in taxes are paid. However, over 95% is going back to the state. $1 goes in the C-tax bucket. This is another population-based distribution, so we get 16 cents of that. And by the time it gets to Reno, we only get 5 cents. So 5 cents off a carton of cigarettes. Governmental service tax. Say you have a $30,000 vehicle, pay $420 of governmental service tax at registration. About half goes back to the state. The other half goes to the local government bucket. And these are the ones we like. If you notice, that entire 205 goes into our Washoe bucket because it's a point of origin distribution. And then by the time it gets to Reno, we get $63. Real property transfer tax. You sell a $500,000 home, $2,050 is paid in tax. About 3/4 goes back to the state. C-tax gets a quarter. Once again, it's a point of origin, so we do like these. $550 goes into our Washoe bucket, and then by the time Reno gets it, it's $169 off that one sale. And then lastly, we have our sales tax example. So you buy a $100 lawnmower at Home Depot, you're gonna pay $827 in sales tax. $6 goes back to the state and for those other local optional purposes. $225 goes into our C-tax bucket. Since it mostly goes into our Washoe bucket, we almost get that whole $225. The guarantee counties get less than a cent there. But by the time it gets to Reno, only 69 cents. So a $100 transaction yields 69 cents in revenue for the city, which isn't much. So that makes us question, how balanced is C-tax versus population? What's interesting in southern Nevada is a lot of the economic activity and population live in incorporated Clark. They have I think about 40% of the population, and then the Strip is also included in unincorporated Clark County. Meanwhile, in northern Nevada, the reverse is true. Reno has the largest population, and most of the economic activity happens here. We have the casinos downtown, the airport, and a lot of other business centers. Where in unincorporated Washoe, it's about 23% of the population, and a lot of it is rural. So when we plot population to C-tax, or the amount of stew we're getting, you can see the differences. Unincorporated Washoe and City of Sparks have about the same population, but unincorporated Washoe, or Washoe the entity, is getting 51% of the stew. Reno has the lion's share of the population, but only getting 31%, and then Sparks is 22 and 12. If you look at the breakdown in southern Nevada, it's a lot more balanced. Unincorporated Clark has 44% of the population, getting 36% of the stew. City of Las Vegas is merely even at 28 and 27. Henderson, 15 and 10, and then City of North Las Vegas is 12 and 6. So that leaves us with a puzzle. We know that Washoe should probably get more C-tax because they provide regional services to all the residents in the county, along with some municipal services to the unincorporated residents. So the next steps in solving this puzzle is that we've identified is identify what municipal services each the county and city provide, identify the regional services, and then try to determine how much C-tax is funding those municipal and regional services and comparing them on a per capita basis. So as a Reno resident, are you getting the same level of funding as an unincorporated resident, especially for your municipal services? So those are the next steps we've kind of identified in trying to solve this puzzle. So that concludes the presentations. I know it's a lot to digest, but if there's two things that we'd like you to take away is that sales tax is by far the largest contributor. Local governments don't receive all the revenue that make up C-tax. And using our sales tax example, on a $100 purchase, buyer pays $8.27 in taxes, but Reno gets only 69 cents. So with that, thank you guys for having me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to reno.gov.ctax, and we have some other materials that we produced on there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll go to questions. Commissioner Velto.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. I really appreciated that presentation. I have a couple questions. I will try to be quick. When they make determinations for distribution based on population, how do they determine, what do they rely on? Is it census data, or do they do new population examinations?
The population data is based on the state demographer's annual governor certified estimates. The reason why cigarette and liquor tax are administered based on population is because the tax is administered at the wholesale level, and some wholesalers out of state. Not every county has a wholesaler. So when they created the formula, they thought the most equitable way to distribute it would be population.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the supplemental city relief tax, there's a guaranteed amount for smaller counties.
Yes.
I know you said that for enterprise districts, that's fixed in statute. Is that also the case for the smaller counties, or does that change year to year?
That one changes year to year. They get an inflation adjustment for the guaranteed county amount. And if they graduate, they can also petition to the Nevada Tax Commission to go back into guaranteed status. What will actually happen in some smaller counties are you'll have a mining company come in, generate a lot of sales tax because they're buying equipment. They leave the next year, and then the county has not enough revenue to sustain on their own. So they will make a petition and then to go move back into guaranteed status.
So, and then I have one last question, then I'll turn it over. For the base distribution slide,
Yes.
so my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong with the question, but it seemed like there was a base amount that people get based on the prior year. And then if you are like a high-performing county, you get more. Does every county get this base distribution met before the high-performing counties get more money?
Yes, so it works on a year-to-date accumulative basis. So the base amount is the amount that each NLT is entitled to. So let's say our Washoe bucket is $1 million. Month one, only 900,000 came in. Month two, 1.1 million comes in. So above the base, but we still have that shortfall of 100,000. That 1.1 million would not go to excess. It would be split up using the base rates to make the counties whole per se. So you have to have the base amount on a year-to-date basis made whole before it can go into excess. But if it was month one, we got $1 million, that 100,000 comes in. Enterprise districts don't get to benefit from the excess formula, but local governments and special districts would. Special districts don't get to benefit from population, so they kind of get left off that growth factor per se, but they do get the plus 2% and the assessed value growth.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Commissioner Becerra.
Great. Thank you so much. And I agree, that was such a really good presentation, really informative, one that I've been looking forward to. And I'll definitely share with my network and residents because I think they'll really appreciate it. The question is that certain projects that come through City Hall for special approval through these chambers, in our process, can oftentimes generate like huge spike in sales tax during the going vertical stage or the construction phase more specifically, and through equipment purchasing. But very little ongoing sales tax after that. Like, how does staff account for that front-loaded revenue drop-off when planning long-term service budgets? Or is that part of that puzzle that you and others on staff are trying to solve for?
Yeah, it's one of the puzzles that we're trying to solve. After the COVID-19 pandemic, I during it, the State Economic Forum, I think, was projecting huge shortfalls, and we really didn't know what to expect during that time. But actually, the reverse happened. So there was this huge surplus in tax revenue and sales tax. It makes planning challenging. So with sales tax being fairly volatile, it's one of the challenges that staff face, especially as a local government where most our dollars are sales tax based. At the state level, they have a lot better mix. You have your modified business tax, your live entertainment taxes, the 2% gaming tax. So predicting sales tax at the local government level can be challenging.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, I think that will conclude this item. So thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you guys for having me. Have a good night.
Okay, that will move us on back to where we were on the agenda. This will be item C1. Commissioner Becerra, you notified in advance that you wanted to have two specific areas of this item put on the record. So before we get to those questions for this item, are there any disclosures any commissioners would like to make pertaining to this item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we will now move to public comment. Madam Clerk.
I do not have any public comment registered for this item, in person or online.
Do we have any requests to speak in chambers at this time on item C1? Seeing none, we will now move to questions from the commission. Commissioner Becerra, please proceed.
Sure, Commissioner Becerra, for the record, just want to acknowledge that I appreciate the support from the I guess neighboring residents. It seems like from at least the NAD comments and from staff, but there were just a couple things that stood out to me that maybe seemed like concerns, and I just want to make sure that they were addressed. Is it Jeff that's doing this? Yep, Jeff. So Jeff, what's the maximum on-site capacity for the overnight vehicle staging, and like what specific operational controls will ensure vehicles don't overflow into the adjacent public right-of-way? Because I think that was a concern.
Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record. So I don't recall any concern about vehicles not being able to be parked on site. However, essentially, other than the building, the entire parcel is a big parking lot. Outside of the gate, you have, I think it's 8 parking spaces that would typically be used by members of the public and perhaps employees. And then inside the gate, it's basically a large parking area. So in terms of staging vehicles overnight that are waiting to be worked on or whatnot, there would be plenty of room within that fenced area such that there would not be any requirement or any need for parking any vehicles on the street.
Okay, all right, great, thanks, Jeff. And just one more, kind of more tied to security, and I think there was a mention about that in the alleyway. So like, do you know how the applicant will manage the alley access and security to prevent unauthorized access and address the neighborhood safety concerns?
So I want to make sure I understand your question, Commissioner Becerra. There were 2 public comments, as you know, that were both in favor of the reestablishment of the auto service and repair use. And I actually spoke with both of those gentlemen. The one that you're referring to, I think his name is Lorenzo, he indicated that he was excited about someone potentially occupying the space again with the inference that it would potentially help deal with homelessness in the alley. So if that's the concern that you're addressing, there's not any particular requirements of the applicant to do anything with regard to the alley and lighting or any kind of safety issues with regard to, homeless in the alley. However, clearly the thought would be that the use of the site, instead of being vacant, the use of the site would help facilitate, hopefully, some, those homeless issues maybe being pushed elsewhere or otherwise. But there's no specific plan or no specific, component of reutilizing the site that would, be aimed at the alley in particular.
Okay, other than just like maybe the premise being that if it's revitalized, if you will.
Exactly, yep.
Okay, got
And-
it. All right.
Commissioner Becerra, the applicant is here, so if you did have any questions in terms of the access to the alley and plans and whatnot, I'm sure he could speak to that.
No, unless the applicant wants to speak to those questions or maybe how they perceive, their particular business helping address those issues. But, I've full faith that little revitalization goes a long way, and it sounds like there's good residential support, so that's great.
Very well.
Do we have any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, we will.
Mr. Chair, can I ask maybe two questions?
Yes, please.
Procedurally, maybe this is for staff. So since we went through basically the process, what are we approving now? Are we approving the consent agenda, or are we motioning to approve this specific case number LDC?
You would motion to approve this specific case number.
Okay. Since we are doing that now, I guess my question, and this is more procedural one and maybe from legal, what remedies do we have? When we did this research about our consent agenda, it was the research we did in the cities that we looked into had a requirement that more than one commissioner had to have approval to pull something from the consent agenda, or in San Francisco, they did a vote to remove something from the consent agenda. So I'm just wondering, is this something, do we need to lay out more terms in our charter that identify what we're doing in regards of pulling things from the consent agenda? And is that a process that we can work towards for the future consent agenda items?
I'll have legal weigh in as well, but I do know, like, for example, with council, any council member can pull an item from the consent agenda, and then they will either call for questions or a staff report or a presentation, but I would defer to legal as well.
You could certainly amend your bylaws to address that, but the bylaws have to be approved by council. And because council, as Mr. Raley just said, any council member can pull an item from the consent agenda. That having more than one person requirement might not be something that they would approve.
Okay, but we have a path if we wanted to propose one. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
If there are no further questions, we will now move to deliberation and entertain a motion on item C1, should one be made.
Commissioner Becerra, I'm happy to make a motion to support this project.
Please proceed.
Absolutely. Sure. In the matter of case number LDC 26-00101, 55 South Wells Auto Service and Repair, I make a motion to approve this project as presented, and I can make all the findings.
Commissioner Del Villar, I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. That concludes item C1. We will now move to item D1. This is a staff report for possible action, case number LDC 26-00068. This is 935 Manzanita Side Setback Deviation. We will again begin with a presentation from staff. Mr. Foster.
All right. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record. It's good to see some of you here. I haven't seen you here in a while, so good to see you. 935 Manzanita, side setback deviation, LDC 26-68. The project site is about 0.28 acres in size. It's located on the north side of Manzanita Lane, about 210 feet east of Lakeside Drive near Manzanita Park. It's currently developed with a single-family home that is used as a group home. The request before you is a major deviation to reduce the required side yard setback from 5 feet to 2.5 feet. And most of you will note that this was heard at the Planning Commission on June 4th and was continued, and here we are bringing it back to you tonight. The key issue that staff analyzed is compatibility with surrounding land uses, which include single-family residences in all directions. At the June 4th Planning Commission hearing, there were two key items that were addressed that needed further investigation, namely lot coverage, and how project changes enabled by the major deviation enhance the overall design of the project, operations of the project, or public benefits resulting from the project. And that is finding number 2. Master plan is single-family neighborhood, and a couple of policies from the master plan that line up with the request. And the zoning district is single-family 5 units per acre. The background, again, this single-family home was built in 1966. The applicants purchased the home in 2021 and subsequently built a covered carport in the east side yard within the required 5-foot setback, approximately 1.5 feet from the fence, and that's in the area shown here. And they did so without obtaining approval. They need to submit a building permit to downsize the carport and bring it into compliance with the 2.5-foot setback allowed with approval of this major deviation if in fact the Planning Commission approves that. Regarding compatibility with surrounding land uses, the carport is set back about 55 feet from the street and is partially screened by a solid gate. The gate is of course open in this picture, but you can see here on the left where it would provide some screening if it was closed. The proposal does not compromise the health, safety, or welfare of the adjacent property owners. And in fact, the neighbor to the east did provide a letter of support. Because there are surrounding residential uses, staff is recommending the standard days and hours of construction, condition number 5, and a setback verification letter to confirm the proposed placement of the structure complies with the 2.5-foot setback per condition number 6. Here are the recommended findings for a major deviation. I did add in italics, the extra 2.5 feet could give better access for exiting during fire emergencies when a vehicle is parked in the carport. And again, that is with respect to finding number 2 from the last hearing. The applicant is here, will be making a presentation, and can get further into those particular details. Here's the recommended motion. I'm available for questions.
Okay, and you said the applicant would be making a presentation. Okay, so would the applicant please step forward, state your name for the record, and you may proceed.
Hello, my name is Joseph Castillo. This is Jose Castillo.
I would like to add that I am the owner of said facility.
Just 1 second, sorry. Don't think I had the presentation in here.
I could also send it over. Okay.
For anyone online, please hold for a minute. We're working on getting the presentation up.
Oh, the tap waters.
Again, my name is Joseph Castillo. I'm the applicant and owner of 935 Manzanita Lane. We are asking to reduce the required 5-foot setback to be reduced by 2.5 feet, leaving us a 2.5-foot setback deviation. This setback reduction addresses 2 everyday access needs along the west side of the carport, the first being the double door access and the second being the mobility clearance. The double door access ease of access to the double door entrance located directly west of the carport, and the mobility clearance allows wheelchairs and walkers access when a car is parked in the carport. Here I've attached a picture of the double door entrance along with a evacuation map. The double door entrance is located in the middle in that vacant rectangle close to the legend key. This is the entrance to the double door entrance and the one that we use for hospitalizations of our residents who may be getting stretchered or gurneyed out of the facility. This is a current picture of the carport with a car parked inside alongside a wheelchair to help visualize how the wall to the right will be moving from the current state of 1.5 feet to 2.5 feet. The required 5 foot would make it very difficult for wheelchairs and walkers to get in and out of the property, leading us to requesting for the 2.5 foot setback. The reasons for the carport provides a sheltered, flexible area that supports 3 resident needs. The first being medical transport loading during hospitalization, which could already be quite painful and traumatic. During loading into the paramedic vehicle, this could be a very slow process into getting them into the vehicle. So the shade provides protection from the sun or extreme cold conditions such as the snow or rain. To build off that, this protects the residents from who may be susceptible to sun sickness or a stroke, as well as being sensitive to extreme heat and extreme cold conditions. I also would like to add that this area in particular is a lot flatter than the driveway that we have, as it is slanted. So this heavily reduces the risk for falling on the ground for residents who are elderly and disabled. The last is for room for residential activity, which they can pursue, whether that be yoga or maybe a more private time with their family, which could be set up for lunches or dinners. For these reasons, we respectfully ask for the favorable consideration of the major deviation request, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you for the presentation. We will now move to disclosures from the commission. We'll start with Commissioner Velto.
Commissioner Velto, no disclosures.
Commissioner Gampiantini, no disclosures.
Commissioner McCoy, no disclosures.
Commissioner Jockman, same.
Commissioner Williams, same.
Commissioner Del Villar, no disclosures.
Commissioner Becerra, read and reviewed the materials, and I'm familiar with the site.
That concludes disclosures. We will now go to public comment. Madam Clerk.
We do not have any requests to speak forums in person, and we do not have any attendees online.
Do we have any requests to speak in chambers at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will close public comment on this item and now move to questions from the commission. Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Commissioner McCoy, I appreciate you guys coming back tonight. I like the presentation you brought. Would have liked to have seen this in June, and maybe we wouldn't be here. The reality is the basis for the deviation started out, well, we can go to 2.5, 5. All right, 2.5 feet, that's kind of what we were talking about. Now we have a basis, of it's going to increase the ability for handicap wheelchairs to come through. So I appreciate that. The questions, still have a couple of questions for you. And part of the concern I have is that your existing site plan, Exhibit C, you carve out that specific area that you just showed us in the photo with the wheelchair as a 10-foot by 22-foot section where you're going to park a Tesla Cybertruck. And so that's what you guys put into the record. That's what I'm reading, and that's where I'm going, okay, well, if the Cybertruck's parked there, you're not squeezing anything by. And so that's part of why we have this discussion. So I appreciate you coming in and saying, no, the plan here is to have space and room so you can get a wheelchair through there. I guess the question I would have is, if you move it a foot, is there still enough room to get a wheelchair by? Because what I'm trying to think about is if the 5 feet works, then are we just granting a major deviation because more is always better, or is it that the 5 feet actually won't work? And did you look at that? Did you measure anything? Did you try to see where that 5 foot actually would be from a wheel out position from a gurney or a wheelchair to get through? Did you guys look at that at all?
We were just basing measurements off of what we could see.
Okay.
We just believe that the 5 foot would make it very difficult or impossible to get a wheelchair or walker or gurney out of there.
I would like to also add that it also depends on the said patient that we're helping, because wheelchairs also come in different sizes and the size of the person as well. So we really do need as much space as we could.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I had a question, and this is more, it's probably going to be for you and for staff, so I'll start with you since you guys are up there. When we came here last, it was discussed or brought up that the lot coverage might actually exceed the 40%. That's not what we're kind of looking at today, although it is kind of an issue in the sense that we need to find that Title 18 is being met with. And if it's exceeding 40%, and I think what we have now in the record is it's actually 42.6. So what I have in front of me is a record showing that the project is not in compliance with Title 18. So if the idea is that we're going to make that finding, or that I'm going to be able to make that finding, we're going to need some kind of a condition that's going to deal with that to make sure that at the end of the day, that's going to be brought down to 40%. I've seen proposals in the materials, but I haven't seen a specific plan, and that concerns me from an enforceability standpoint. We're also giving a major deviation, or if we do that tonight, to allow for this coverage, and that's the purpose of the major deviation. I want to make sure that what we're doing isn't going to impact that. So if we decide that, yes, the 2.5 feet deviation actually supports finding number 2 that we have to make tonight, that the lot coverage reduction doesn't somehow interfere with that. I'm new at conditions, so I don't know if staff can hop up, if they can talk, and then see if you guys are willing to kind of accept a condition that would say the final project has to be below, or meet the 40%, but also it's not going to interfere with the basis of our major deviation finding, which is this kind of 2.5 feet. Staff, I don't know if I've made any sense at all, but if you can come up and kind of work through me, that would be great.
Jeff Foster, Associate Planner. So the issue at hand is that the lot coverage as calculated after the June 4th hearing, I obtained documentation in terms of the size of the home. There were some building permits for some expansions and things like that. Ultimately, we calculated that with the shed in the back, that they are at approximately 42.6%. and therefore 2.6% above what is allowed. I will note that this is not an issue that is typically addressed, and it's certainly not in the context of this particular major deviation request. These things are addressed during the building permit review, and in fact, that already has been brought up to the applicant, of course. So it's not really what is being deliberated tonight, respecting Commissioner McCoy's request. I am fine with a condition of approval that essentially places a condition guarantee that when this does come forward to a building permit, that the applicants demonstrate that they are achieving that 2.6% reduction via either the removal of the shed in the back, which I think in and of itself would get it down to 40% if I remember correctly, or the reduction of the size of the carport. So we can certainly work through that when the building permit review happens to make sure that the 40% lot coverage is achieved. But if you want to add it as a condition of approval to formalize that, we can certainly make that happen.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I have one, Commissioner Giacomo, I have one clarifying question. So Commissioner McCoy, I guess, are you proposing an additional condition that would cap them at 40%? Is that what your line of questioning was getting at?
What I'm getting at is that I've seen a lot of Title 18 issues where we say building will handle that and permit down the road. And it's my understanding that that's kind of often the case. For me, what's specific about this issue is that we have a record that explicitly says Title 18 is not being met as to lot coverage. So that's a finding that I was struggling to make for the major deviation. So what I'm looking for is a condition that says, yeah, we're going to make that, and that's part of this process, so that I'm comfortable making the finding tonight so that we can move on to that process. But also making sure that the reduction of the 2.6%, or however, at a minimum 2.6%, isn't somehow done on the project that, and I don't know what this would be, I don't know if they would, I can't even contemplate right now. What my concern is, I didn't want there to be an ability where our finding on the major deviation is somehow undermined by whatever changes are, happening on the reduction down the road.
If I may, I think it's fairly straightforward from my perspective, and I may be missing something, so I would welcome feedback from others. But if the applicant is cutting back an additional foot nominally, right, from the fence, they're at 1.5 feet now, in order to achieve the 2.5 foot setback, if that's what's approved, that means basically a foot needs to come off of the existing carport, right, along the entire length of that carport to make it 2.5 feet from the fence. So whatever that square footage is, a foot times whatever the length is, that would be some reduction. And if that doesn't get us to the 40%, then the applicant could either choose to further reduce the size of the carport in terms of the length, right?
Okay.
So it would still be 2.5 feet off the fence, but then they could reduce the length of the carport to reduce square footage, and or choose to remove the shed in the back.
Okay.
And either way, however they get there, we can run calculations and they can figure out how to get us down, or get down to that 40% coverage.
Okay.
So I don't think it will change any of the, kind of what is at stake in terms of the 2.5 foot offset. It just may require that carport to be shrunk lengthwise. It's going to have to be shrunk widthwise by a foot.
And I didn't want that to jeopardize the easement and emergency access that we're using to justify the deviation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Again, it's still going to be the 2.5 foot space in between the carport wall and the fence, no matter how you slice it.
Okay, so yeah, I would look for a condition on that particular finding. And then I just had one more question. We discussed about fire. This is a question I raised at the last hearing, which is the opposite side has a 2.5 easement. They haven't built yet. So the question was really, does fire look at this project and say there's a 2.5 easement on this side, a 2.5 easement on this side, where there's going to be structures basically 5 feet apart with a fence down the middle? Does fire look at that and say, yeah, this is okay? And the response that I received from fire was that they would like some type. They're not here tonight saying it's a mandatory thing, but what they would like to see is some type of promise or guarantee that nothing is going to go into that easement, that 2.5 feet between the wall and the fence would remain open and accessible to fire hose, and firefighting abilities. And that's a big issue in my mind right now, because my in-laws' house just almost caught on fire up in Lake Ridge, and they had plenty of space. There's no fence, no easement setback issues. Fire got in there and kept it minimal to the garages. And I don't even, their ability to get in and fight this thing is what I'm concerning when I see this project and it's so tight. I don't know if you had any thoughts about that. It's too late to go back to the neighbor and say, hey, let's keep that 2.5 clear. Did you have any thoughts about what fire said with regards to?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Commissioner McCoy is referring to is correspondence from Fire Marshal John Beck, who said that he would request, and he's the one who actually reviewed both the major deviation at the adjacent property and this major deviation request. So he was already familiar with both requests, but when asked further, he suggested that he didn't specifically say a condition, but effectively a request. He would make a request that the applicant agree to maintain that area and keep it clear of anything being put in there. And so I think it would be appropriate to add a condition of approval for this particular case. Again, it's too late for the neighbor, though I would be happy to call him and ask him to
not do it.
To not do it.
Right.
I'm sure he would agree.
Right.
But as far as a condition of approval, I think it would be appropriate to essentially require, prior to issuance of the building permit, that we receive a formal agreement from the applicant to keep that area clear.
So we have a few potential modified conditions that are being discussed. And we have other questions from the commission. So I'll just inform the applicant that if a motion is made with modified conditions, we will ask that you weigh in on the motion before the motion's made to make sure that you understand what the motion is. Commissioner Valto.
Yeah, so I sympathize. Thank you. I sympathize with Commissioner McCoy's concern. I was doing some math over here. I'm not a math guy, so I'm not going to work through the numbers, but it doesn't seem like just reducing by the 2.5 feet would get them under the 40%, so I hope that city looks at that. But as to whether there should be a condition, could you maybe walk us through what the condition of approval number 1 and 2 require the city to do for the building permit? It's my understanding that those are the general conditions that we put on these processes, which means the city then has to apply Title 18 when they issue the permit. Is that correct? And kind of walk me through whether you think these conditions are necessary?
Yeah, so condition number 1 is basically plans as submitted, compliance with Title 18, et cetera, right? And so that's why I point out, for the record, that I don't particularly think a condition is necessarily warranted for the lot coverage issue, because that happens to be my responsibility as the building permit plan reviewer to make sure that the lot coverage is achieved irrespective of a condition of approval. So if there was no entitlement for this tonight, but there was a building permit that was submitted, one of the things that I would be checking during the building permit plan check review process, or me or whoever would be doing it, would be the lot coverage. So that compliance with Title 18 is effectively baked into the process regardless. However, we do occasionally condition things that are code. And that we do that when there are extenuating circumstances, when there's something where we really want to make sure that there's a condition that needs to be double checked, as it makes its way through the process. So this is, Title 18 lot coverage is, it's part of Title 18, but we can build it in as a condition of approval to satisfy Commissioner McCoy, and if the rest of you agree to it, just to make sure that that lot coverage issue is addressed when we get to the building permit stage.
And Chair, just a quick follow-up. I seem to remember us doing that as a commission, and I maybe have misremembering this, with some of the Verdi projects.
Which projects?
Some of the projects out in Verdi, we would, as a commission, I think we conditioned things that were requirements related to fire because there was so much concern from the public that we ended up putting in conditions that dealt with that, even though it might have otherwise been covered by Title 18. I guess my concern is I don't want to have runaway conditions, but I understand why in this context it makes sense to add a condition. I don't have any issue with that.
And Chair, I'd be happy to explain some of my rationale here, because I do know.
So we're still in questions. You certainly will get the opportunity in deliberation. Do we have any other questions from the commission at this time?
Commissioner Dellier, I think mine would probably be more of discussion, but it's around the same conversation, and that is the fact that if we approve it, we are approving it based on the findings, and the findings specifically say compliance with Title 18. And I think that's where the concern is coming up right now.
So before we're eager to get to deliberation, it seems. So do we have any other questions from the commission before we move to that? Seeing none, let's proceed. Commissioner Valto.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, and I may be off on this. Some folks here might have a better memory of this, but I remember we had these projects out in Verdi where there were big developments, and there was a lot of concerns about fire safety and fire access. And I think we put conditions that otherwise would have been captured by Title 18 as a means of getting people to support it and also communicating to the public that we were taking it very seriously. Commissioner Del Villar, I hear what you're saying with we're seeing this, and now we're looking at does this comply with Title 18? We're making that finding. It's almost like we condition every project to say, by the time it's built, it has to comply with Title 18. So we kind of make sure staff handles that. And I am not opposed to this condition because I think it makes sense here, but I just want to caution against doing that too often, because I wouldn't want to have a bunch of now we have 50 conditions
Yeah.
that are already contemplated by the code.
No, I understood. Commissioner Del Villar. Thank you, Commissioner Velto. I think my concern is specifically with this because there is only 2.5 feet on one side and 2.5 feet on the other side of the property. And so it does seem like this in particular, we just want to make sure, per what the fire chief is looking for as well, that we make it known to the applicant that it is a concern and that this is something they need to comply with. So, yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Commissioner Jockman, I'll say, so there were two discussed motions there. The one about fire, hearing that you reached out to the fire marshal there and got comments, I think that's absolutely appropriate. I like that addition of that condition. I think what we're hearing from staff in this is that they view this, and they've obviously calculated that coverage already, so they view that condition as being a little bit redundant in order to make that Title 18 finding. So I see the discussion about precedent, but I'm certainly, therefore, I guess I view that added condition as perhaps a bit redundant. Happy to go along with it. The second condition, I like that one. So I'd love to see that in a motion should one be made. Commissioner Becerra.
Sure, thank you. Just wanted to echo those sentiments across the board. I appreciate Commissioner McCoy's take on this and your critique, thoughtful critique on it. With Commissioner Belto in that it definitely is good for us to use this as an exception, but at the same time support where Commissioner Del Villar is coming from in terms of supporting our fire team as well. If they're raising issue or making a particular request, then we should definitely heed it. And I think it's appropriate here. So happy to support the condition and the motion when it comes forward.
Commissioner McCoy, and I will say if we could, if perhaps you could start presenting some draft language so that we could get it on the screen at some point. If not, maybe Commissioner Velto, but yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to, I understand that it's, and I certainly don't want to open up Pandora's box tonight and say this is what we're going to do every planning commission going forward. For me, this issue was raised at the NAB. We had a NAB member come in and say there's a lot size issue here. This wasn't something staff raised on their own. It was raised in the public record last time around. Staff came back and confirmed, yep, in fact, it is an issue. So for me, I see this differently than the project's a little amorphous, we don't know, but we assume that by the time it's done, it's going to meet code. This is a situation we know right now as it stands. This project is in violation of Title 18. Not only that, but this project has several things on it that were non-conforming or were built up and caught in a city staff kind of violation. So for me, I just wanted to be extra clear in this case where we're dealing with a situation where we had things built that did not have permission to be built, that we are 100% clear that this is going to be, at the 40% mark. That's, for me, that's the justification in my mind why I believe it's warranted in this particular case and would not be necessarily in every case going forward. But the record tonight for me is that it's an issue. The condition takes it away from me, and I would be happy to support that with that condition. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
A little confused on if people are agreeing or disagreeing at this point. But, I think for me, this hits because we're seeing a lot more of these setback deviations. And I think originally I had raised some concerns about them. I think the encroachment of property lines is something we ought to take very seriously because what we bought is what we bought. And when it gets smaller, it affects people. We work together with the city. Now we have Condition 6, which sets lot line survey requirements to these things, which are important because if we're granting a deviation, we should understand where that lot line is. And so that condition was a result of us raising concerns. I would say that I would also support this, the additional condition tonight being that we are seeing more of these reduction in lot lines. And I think we should double check, and if whatever we can do to ensure that it's done right is important to me. So happy to support that additional condition also.
Okay, I do not see any other hands raised. I'll say one more thing, Commissioner Jockman. So the I appreciate the discussion there about how the addition of this condition pertaining to the 40% coverage is limited and does not necessarily set a precedent for everything. So I do appreciate that, given the non-compliance of the current site. We are talking about 2 conditions, so I would, if possible, it would be great to see these on the screen so that the applicant can also see how we are deliberating on their property, and give them an opportunity to provide any comment if they like, since this is not the motion that was initially intended on this agenda item.
So,
Mr. Foster.
yeah, Jeff Foster, Associate Planner. So I don't have draft conditions. This is kind of hot off the press in the last day or so.
Yep.
So though I have via Commissioner McCoy some kind of template language that is very much in line with the discussion tonight. Commissioner McCoy, I don't know if you want to read your suggested language, but what I can promise you is that if the motion is in support of the request with these 2 additional conditions, I understand the spirit of the conditions, and the wordsmithing, the precise language would be done tomorrow prior to issuing the decision letter. So.
Thank you, Jeff. Sean McCoy, Commissioner McCoy, for the record. I've got just some suggested language, and I'll read it, fully understanding that this is way outside of my lane. So if it doesn't make sense or you want to tweak it, please.
I think it was pretty good already. But yeah.
So with regards to the 40%, the conceptual concept, or I guess the condition I would look for is, before issuing of a building permit, final plans must identify each structure or portion to be removed or reduced, demonstrate lot coverage of no more than 40%, and preserve the access arrangement shown in the materials relied upon for our decision tonight. Something along those lines, just making sure that we're keeping that access there, and that the plans are going to demonstrate what the reduction is going to be.
Yep.
Okay. And then with regard to fire, maintain a minimum 2.5-foot clear and unobstructed firefighter access area on the subject property side of the fence with, I don't know if we have fire-approved wording defining prohibited obstructions, or, what that would look like or not, because again, that's from fire standpoint, but just looking to make sure that we have 2.5-foot clear and unobstructed firefighter access along that area.
That certainly works.
Okay.
If that is a motion, I will second a motion with those additional conditions.
I don't believe that was a motion. It was just a description of the
fair.
additional conditions. So hearing what you just heard, does anyone have any discussion about those, the verbiage presented there by Commissioner McCoy? And also, I want to afford the applicant the opportunity to weigh in on that.
We understand the conditions, and we find it completely fair and understand.
Thank you. So would anyone else like to weigh in before any motion is made? Seeing none, Commissioner McCoy, would you, I'll put it right back on you, since you had the text in front of you, would you please proceed with this condition subject to the modified conditions? Please proceed.
Okay. Commissioner McCoy, for the record, in the matter of case LDC 26-00068, based upon compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the major deviation subject to the modified conditions read into the record moments ago.
Commissioner Velto, a second.
We have a motion and a motion and a second. Any discussion? And do we have any discussion from legal? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. That concludes item D1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move to item D2. This is a staff report for possible action. This is a recommendation to City Council. Case number LDC 26-00090, North Virginia Street zoning map amendment. Before we begin, I'd recognize the applicant and the subject parcel is the same as item D3. Will there be two staff presentations and applicant presentations for these items?
There'll be two staff presentations. I doubt that the applicant would want to cover the zone change.
Understood. Okay. Mr. Gilbert, please proceed.
All right, good evening. For the record, I'm Nathan Gilbert, Principal Planner with Development Services, presenting LDC 2690 North Virginia Street Zoning Map Amendment. The 16.78 acre subject site is located east of the intersection of North Virginia Street and Wellington Way. This is a zoning map amendment from mixed-use suburban to mixed employment zoning. The master plan designation for the area is mixed employment, and supporting master plan policies include community development, employment centers, employment area, industrial logistics area. All three of these policies prioritize light industrial types of uses in areas identified as such in the structure plan of the master plan. Again, mixed-use suburban zoning to mixed employment zoning is what's being requested. The ME zone is a conforming district within the ME master plan, unsurprisingly, land use designation. The change to the ME zoning designation would bring the zoning into compliance with the master plan. You can see there's about 7 other parcels just directly to the north that have gone through this process. This is a free application when a subject property wants to bring their zoning into conformance with the master plan. It's free to process. Future development is subject to discretionary review for residential adjacency, and coincidentally, LD 2691 was submitted concurrently and will be heard following this item. Staff can make the applicable zoning map amendment findings, and bringing the zoning into conformance with the master plan, the ME would do so. With that, the recommended motion for a recommendation that the City Council approve the zone change is on your screen. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. And I understand we will have a presentation from the applicant. Is that correct?
Good evening. My name is Eric Casey with Wood Rogers. I presented this presentation as one. I don't really think that there's anything specific to the zoning map amendment request that I need to add on to what Nathan said. Just would like to just highlight that we are just doing this to bring this into conformance. The associated CUP that we submitted concurrently with this is allowed in either one of these districts, but just to bring this into compliance and have everything within compliance with the CUP, if that does get approved, we propose this master plan at that time. So with that, I'll wrap up my presentation for the zone change and available for any questions. Thanks.
That concludes the applicant presentation. We will now move to disclosures from the commission, starting with Commissioner Valto.
Commissioner Velto, the applicant's representative reached out to me. I was not able to get back to him, but I think that's my only disclosure.
Commissioner Compaintini, email exchange with the applicant representative.
Commissioner McCoy received a proposed modification from the applicant representative regarding, I believe, one of the conditions.
Commissioner Jockman, same as Commissioner Velto.
Commissioner Williams, read and reviewed materials and familiar with the area.
Commissioner Del Villar, I had communication with the applicant's representative, but I believe that's for the next one that is up, not this one. Correct, technically.
Commissioner Becerra, read and reviewed the materials. I am familiar with the site, and I had a meeting with the applicant's representative.
That will conclude our disclosures. Now, Madam Clerk, public comment.
We did not receive any public comment for this item. I do not have any request to speak forms in person, and we do not have any attendees online.
Do we have any requests to speak in chambers? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will now close public comment and move to questions from the commission. Commissioner Becerra.
Sure, thank you. Just a clarifying one. Nate, it's probably a quick one. This one seems more administrative, that regardless if this applicant came through, you all as the staff would want to do this cleanup anyways for adherence, right? Just from a compliance perspective?
That's correct. It's just really just a matter of staff resources and priorities.
Right, because I remember we did this for the late Tom Dolan along Plum Lane when a lot of those things were happening and projects. So I think given that, honestly, for judicious sake, I'm happy to move straight to a motion unless people have blatant concerns about this.
Do we have any, hearing that, do we have any other questions from the commission? Seeing no hands raised, we will move to deliberation and entertain a motion should, Commissioner Velto.
Yes, happy to make a motion. In the matter of case number LDC 26-00090, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance.
Commissioner
Commissioner Vitera, I
Gambino, I
second.
second.
Oh, I gotta pick one.
It was a tie.
We have a tie. I'll let Callie make the decision. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. That concludes item D2. Moving on to item D3, staff report for possible action, case number LDC 26-00091, North Virginia outdoor storage. Mr. Gilbert.
All right, hello again, Nathan Gilbert, Principal Planner with Development Services, presenting LDC 2691, 0 North Virginia outdoor storage. So again, the subject site, 16.7 acres, located northeast of the intersection of North Virginia and Wellington Way. The requests this evening are for a conditional use permit to allow outdoor storage and evaluate residential adjacency, hillside development, and cuts and fills. Additionally, a major deviation is requested to reduce the distance for the applicability, for residential adjacency standards. Key issues with this request include compatibility with surrounding uses and the overall site design. So the project proposes grading that would effectuate 3 future parcels. So basically, it's grading to facilitate 3 building pads. The first parcel 1, fronting North Virginia Street, is 6.23 acres. Now 1.6 acres of this, that's the area highlighted in red, which is the fenced area for outdoor storage. And additionally, there'd be a 5,000 square foot office building located in the upper northwest portion of that parcel. Parcels 2 and 3 are on the rear. They total 8 acres. There's no development proposed at this time. It's essentially just grading these super pads for future development. Any development moving forward on that site would require at a minimum a minor site plan review for residential adjacency, and depending on the use, could possibly be a conditional use permit that would be reviewed by this body. The outdoor storage is set back 115 to 215 feet back from the roadway. And the rear parcels 2 and 3 are set back 500 feet. 10 feet of landscaping is proposed along North Virginia Street. That's street trees, 30 feet on center with six shrubs for every tree. The existing riparian area, it's the area highlighted here, is generally preserved. The applicant worked with staff to push that back to provide greater setbacks, protect that riparian area. It would also provide enhanced vegetative screening. Staff is aware that there's potentially wetlands identified to the south. The wetlands delineation study was a draft wetlands delineation study was performed for RTC regarding the North Virginia Street improvements. And condition number 10 would require a formalized version of this study and adequate mitigation per code. Again, this is a draft study. We don't know the specifics, or we would wait until that study is finalized and accepted. But it could, depending on the wetland type, require 1-to-1, 1.5-to-1, or 2-to-1 mitigation for that disturbance of the southern roadway. Hillside development, there are slopes throughout the site, including slopes greater than 30%, which require additional open space mitigation. The slopes in the central portion of the site will be graded for pads and with the remainder left undisturbed. 4.93 acres of open space is required with that additional 30% mitigation, and 5.41 acres are provided. Grading required to create usable pads are consistent with the mixed employment land uses. Fills greater than 10 feet on the south central portion of the site. That's the area in blue. With a maximum fill of 25 feet. And there are very limited cuts to the north, greater than 20 feet, with a maximum cut of 35 feet. That's the area in red. A major deviation is requested. The residential adjacency standards preclude outdoor storage between a building and a residentially zoned property. So the residentially zoned property in this case is deed restricted open space for the subdivision to the south. It's a steep hillside. Technically, it is zoned SF3. The applicant was, since the outdoor storage would have no impact on that parcel, the applicant was seeking relief. A major deviation to the distance requirement for residential adjacency applicability would be reduced from 300 feet to 150 feet, would allow for the use in its location. Condition number 7 applies the remaining standards of residential adjacency, which address issues like noise, lighting, and the like. So it's a bit of a circuitous way to address it, but it does. It's a tool that would, if approved, would allow for that outdoor storage to be located between that residential zoning. But with condition number 7, all of the other remaining residential adjacency standards would remain. The light industrial uses are to the north, single-family residential, the Raleigh Heights subdivision to the west, and residentially zoned open space is located to the south. Again, there are 115 to 215 foot setbacks from North Virginia Street with 10 feet of landscaping, and the southern portion of the site is completely screened by topography. Staff is recommending condition number 6, which is a decorative wall to screen storage and parking from view of the public right-of-way. Applicable findings are on your screen for the conditional use permit. Outdoor storage use is allowed in both the MS zone, the existing MS zone, and the proposed ME zones with an approved conditional use permit. With conditions, the design, grading, and operations are compatible with the surrounding area. The project meets code requirements. There are adequate services available, and the location is compatible with the physical land characteristics. Key hillside development, the technical aspects are adhered to through project meets code standards. Grading is appropriate for mixed employment pad development, and it utilizes a revegetated, more gentle 3-to-1 slope between the pads to soften the visual impacts. The project exceeds minimum open space requirements and generally preserves the existing riparian areas along North Virginia Street, and the setbacks, grading, and revegetation are appropriate to reduce the visual impacts of grading. Finally, the major deviation findings, abutting residential zoning is steep topography. The site will be completely screened from residential zoning to the south. Varying the distance standard will allow for the outdoor storage use between the residentially zoned open space to the south, with no impacts to the southern parcel. All other residential adjacency standards are applied through condition number 7. And the project would not compromise the health, safety, welfare, or the abutting property owner. The recommended motion's on your screen, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. And please remind me, do we have an applicant presentation for this item? Yes, okay. I'm sorry. Please proceed, yeah.
Thank you. Eric Hasty for the record again. I'm with Wood Rogers. I'm representing the applicant, Powerhouse Construction, who's also here tonight. I also have Todd Gamble, who's the engineer on this project. So getting into the conditional use permit and major deviation, just wanted to say there is a lot here, but just wanted to keep in mind that this project is a good fit for the area as well as the zoning, and I kind of want to start there. So just to give you an idea of what this area is and kind of the history and why these conditions are, why the CUP is being triggered. This is kind of flipped, so we're looking south. And so you have a lot of properties along Security Circle that are in the industrial or commercial uses that are like familiar with the mixed employment area. Those have been there for a number of decades. You have a lot of outdoor storage, as you can see, that have been there for a while. And then on the other side of North Virginia Street, you do have the existing residents. Those homes have been there for a number of decades as well. But then to the south there, we also have that SF3 zoned parcel. That is that deed restricted parcel that Nathan said. It also has a master plan designation of PGOS. So the likelihood of homes ever going onto that site is very low. But however, it is zoned with a residential zoning, so we do have to apply the residential adjacency standards for this project. Looking on the site itself, you can see that there is slopes associated with the site, so that's the reason we're triggering the hillside development, which reduces the amount of area we can disturb. And then there is also a riparian area that is shown there from the drainage way that's coming off of North Virginia Street. We did have our environmentalists go out there, evaluate that area, and it was identified as a non-404 wetland. This also complies with the draft report that was performed by Dow for the widening of North Virginia Street. They also identified this area as a non-404 wetland. However, because hillside development standards require us or encourage us in code to protect these riparian areas, we did update our plans once we submitted it to help protect this area. So looking at the overall site, this is for the grading. This triggers the hillside development standards. And the way we did this was because the applicant's goal is to be able to subdivide this parcel into three parcels in the future. They do have plans for the one adjacent to North Virginia Street, and then be able to parcelize those other ones off for future development. So there's no development associated with parcels 2 and 3 right now. There is going to be an access road that will be providing access to all 3 of these parcels. This does comply with code for allowing two points of access, and North Virginia Street is the only frontage road that is currently on the site. So we need to tie into that along North Virginia Street for both those accesses. Moving into the grading a little bit further, Nathan kind of went over this, so I won't spend too much time. But we do trigger cuts and fills, cuts deeper than 20 feet with maximum cut at 35 feet. Those are identified in those areas in red that are anything that's over 20 feet there. And then the light blue areas where we're grading is anything that's fill over 10 feet with a maximum fill of 25 feet. The hatched area there is what we are proposing to be the undisturbed area, or which will be the count towards the requirement for the open space. Again, we are required to provide 4.3 acres. We are proposing 5.4 acres. And we're also staying away from that riparian area that I showed and helping preserve that with the exception of that southern access coming in there. So look at the residential adjacency standards and establishing the use. I think Nathan did a good job of going over this and proposing what needs to apply here. I'd just like to point out that because of this use, we do have a really small building with a real large area for outdoor storage. So the building itself is 5,000 square feet, which in the mixed employment area is a smaller building. It will be proposed to be 1 story. It's located about 120 feet from the nearest residential property. So it does meet a majority of these residential adjacency standards and is not anticipated to impact those residents. So looking at the use that's specific to the outdoor storage and shedding a little more light on the major deviation and what that means. So the major deviation is just for the outdoor storage use itself. So it's for the area that's highlighted there in the pink or the red. We are proposing to reduce that 300-foot setback to a minimum of 150 feet. Again, that 150 feet is just going to be along the southern boundary. Along the western boundary there, the nearest resident is 190 feet, and because of the grading and protecting that riparian area, it really expands out as you go south. There will be a minimum 6-foot tall solid fence or wall around the perimeter, and there was a lot of questions at the NAB that we went to about what's going to go on in the outdoor storage area. So I just like to, I did have a lot of questions that I couldn't answer that I told them that I would answer it here tonight. So the materials that are going to be stored on site are for a landscape business. There's going to be rocks, topsoil, mulch, form boards, irrigation pipes, pelletized pavers, and the fleet vehicles. There was a question at the NAB whether the public would be able to come in here, get materials, and then take them to that. Right now, at this time, this is just for the employees. This is mostly going to be for fleet vehicles. There's anticipated to be 12 to 15 pickup trucks and 4 dumpsters that will be stored on site, as well as the materials. There was questions about the frequency of the materials for deliveries. Really, the nature of this is most of the products and everything are picked up on the way to the construction site, so there's not going to be too many materials, but for the deliveries that do come, it will typically be once per week or three times per month. So really minimal amount, and the traffic that's going to be associated with it is mainly going to be from the employees arriving on site, going off to the job site, coming back at the end of the day, and then going home. There was concerns too about the types of mulch that would be stored there, and I'm told that there's probably going to be about 90 yards of mulch at one time there. That's about what a dump truck can hold. There is going to be water suppression that will be on there. They will be contained within these concrete areas. The water suppression will help to regulate the temperature as well as the dust control. So, I would like to also point out that the nearest residents that are to the west there are much higher in elevation. So I included this here to give you an idea of what those residents were, how high up they will be in relation to where the proposed outdoor storage area is. So not only is there a large separation in vertical distance, but also in elevation. You can see that those fence lines, you can't even see the houses from there. So those are the backyards of the fence. So this storage area that would apply this major deviation to would be not only separated from those nearest residents in distance, but also in elevation. Other screening methods that we are going to be proposing and required to by zoning code would be for slope treatments. We have the riprap, that's rock, that is going to be on the 3-to-1 slopes. Those are basically on the outside of that private drive. Anything on the inside of the private drive is a 2-to-1 slope, and those will be revegetated with the exception of the 3-to-1 slopes that are by the protected riparian area. There will be landscaping. The minimum requirement from code is a 10-foot landscape along the frontage road and trees placed every 30 feet, which we are proposing. I would also like to point out that where we are proposing the landscaping in this plan does align with RTC's plans for the expansion of North Virginia Street. So we've been coordinating with them and making sure that whatever we install along this will not have to be ripped out when they come in and do the widening of that. And we will continue to work with RTC to make sure that our plans are in alliance, especially when we're looking at the access. There's also going to be additional screening for landscaping on the southern border. There's that detention pond in there that will be landscaped. And then there's going to be additional landscaping by the building itself and the parking lot that's up there. Everything that's in the red there is going to be the outdoor storage, and that will be fenced. So we are requesting a modification with this. We wanted to have the ability to have different materials to provide screening. So but still make sure that we are providing adequate screening. What we were proposing at the time was chain link fence with those privacy slats. We understand that that might not be the best, and code actually requires with the solid fence, other materials for composite. The way the condition's written right now would require a masonry, a precast concrete wall. We're asking to just change that so that it's more in line with what code requires. Understanding that we might end up doing a concrete wall there, but in the future, but would like to have that flexibility. So we are requesting that modification to condition 6. In addition to that, we are requesting a modification to condition 10 as it's written. What we are proposing here is just to remove the language that requires the wetland delineation to be approved by the Army Corps of Engineers. As I said before, we had an initial analysis of the wetlands that were on site. They were deemed to be non-404 compliant, as well as that report from Dow. If this is the case, then the likelihood of us getting a confirmation from the Army Corps of Engineers, especially within an 18-month period, is very slim because it is out of their jurisdiction. So we are still, with this modification to this condition, we are still required to provide a wetland delineation report and still ensure that any areas that we are impacting with the final plans will be mitigated, or if we can modify it in a way that would completely avoid it, that would be our goal too. So we are requesting those 2 modifications. We did run these by staff. Staff didn't have any concerns with them. So I just would like to point that out. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will move on to disclosures and then public comment. Seeing as this is the same applicant, same subject parcel on the same night, are there any additional disclosures that any commissioners would like to make aside from what you already stated under item D2? Seeing none, please, Madam Clerk, let the record reflect that the disclosures for item D3 are identical to that of D2. Madam Clerk, would you please proceed with public comment?
Yes, we have not received any correspondence for this item. I do not have any request to speak forms, and we do not have any attendees online.
Do we have any requests to speak in chambers at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will close public comment and move to questions from the commission. Commissioner Del Villar.
Thank you, Commissioner Del Villar. Nathan, I just want to confirm that you agree with the rewritten conditions for 6 and condition 10.
Staff agrees with the modifications of condition 10. Those are provided by the engineering division, and engineering manager reviewed and approved it. Eric outlined the rationale. We do support that. I'd leave condition 6 up to the discretion of the commission. As Eric pointed out, code does require solid fencing. It gives different options. It could be a solid wood fence, a metal fence, a composite fence, but it doesn't specify it. And so staff recommended condition 6 for the Planning Commission's consideration of a decorative precast wall or solid masonry wall, given the high profile nature of it on North Virginia Street.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I have some more questions, but if anybody else has anything.
Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Commissioner McCoy, this one will be for the applicant. Specifically, what specific improvement in project design, operations, or public benefit results from applying the residential adjacency rule at 150 feet instead of 300?
What is the, Eric Hasty for the record. I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
What is the improvement in project design, operations, or public benefit resulting from applying the 150-foot deviation?
So with our modified design, right, we are protecting that riparian area, as well as adding additional landscaping on the southern side there, because the mixed employment zoning designation only requires that landscaping be 10 feet along the frontage road. So there's no requirement for additional landscaping on that southern side. So our original plan had that road or that fence line right where the access is, the southern access. And so by pushing that a little bit farther, we are able to add additional screening for that.
Okay, and that's the southern border 150, right?
Yep.
What about the 190, or was it 190? Yeah, I believe it was 190 feet to the west. What benefit are we achieving from this project in your mind? So
that's a little bit more difficult, but I can kind of dive into code to give you the reasoning behind that. So code does allow outdoor storage as long as it's placed behind a building in this zoning designation within 300 feet. And so because of the nature of this of this use. We needed a larger area. The outdoor storage area is like 1.5 acres. The building that we needed is 5,000. So no matter where we place that building on the site, we were going to need this. We were going to need this major deviation.
Okay, now, it was asked at the NAB, so I don't want to continue to ask questions that you've heard. But the whole property site, not just this parcel one, the whole property site is owned by the applicant, is that correct?
That's correct.
So why not move the project west into the center of that? Is it because you're trying to preserve those two independent parcels that were marked up? I forget I don't know the page on it, but.
Yeah, I think Eric K. Segan for the record. So there's kind of 2 points to that, right? One of them is that he wants his business to be located where it's most visible on Virginia Street. But if we locate it on either one of those other parcels, 2 or 3, the residential adjacency standards are still going to apply. We'd still have to request a major deviation for the outdoor storage use.
If you move that project, parcel 1, into the center, you would still have to apply for a major deviation. There's no way you could modify that?
Into the center, so saying moving the development pads.
Sure.
Okay. Sure, we could potentially do that, but
It would
really-
cut into the parcel 3 and 2.
Yes.
Okay, okay. The only, that's the only question I had for the applicant. I did have one clarifying point on a condition for staff. Again, Commissioner McCoy, for the record, condition 7, I don't know if this is just an oversight, if we want to limit it even more, but in the report, you're looking to exempt only, I think, subsection 2A of 1403. It was very limited. This, to me, seemed like you were doing the whole section as opposed to just doing that very small subsection. So I just want to get clarification for that and to ensure that this clarification or this condition is only applicable to parcel 1, that we're not applying this kind of exemption to everything. It's just this kind of parcel 1 that we've been talking about tonight.
Nathan Gilbert for the record. So as it's written, it's applicable to the entire site, but it's only outdoor storage, right? So if let's say, future parcel 3 were to be an outdoor storage use, this would still allow that to have outdoor storage between a building and the residentially zoned slope, essentially. So it's applicable to the site. It's limited to really the exemption that's being provided. Well, as it's written, it is exempting the residential adjacency standards. The residential adjacency standards through condition 7 are all applied, so it's still in effect. It's a bit of an unorthodox way to approach it, but it's the only way to allow the outdoor storage between a building and that residentially zoned slope to the south.
Okay, so just to clarify, just to make sure I see this right, what you're saying is that this exemption to the outdoor storage adjacency requirement isn't just applied to what we're talking about right now, the CUP and the major deviation of parcel 1. This would run with the entire land that we're looking up there, so anybody coming in for parcel 2 or parcel 3 would automatically have that exemption applied.
If they were doing outdoor storage, because that provision is only for outdoor storage in between a
Right.
building and a residential
And anybody
zone.
who might be concerned about that, when they see that project coming in, would have no say, because we've already approved that tonight.
Well, again, any development that would happen on parcel 2 and 3 would require discretionary review.
So then I guess you're just gonna have to put up with me for a second. What I'm trying to figure out is if we have this condition that says this is only, I don't know even what I'm saying anymore. Because I thought you just said that the residential adjacency exception that we're talking about, saying that you don't have to have this, would apply to future developments that are not even in concept yet.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a reason why we're doing that as opposed to saying this condition, this exemption is only applying to what we're actually contemplating tonight?
I think if you'd like to make that clarification, I think simple modification would be to apply to condition number 7, applicable to parcel 1 in project materials.
Okay.
And if I can tag on to that, I think your concern was if, say, parcel 2 or 3 came back in the future, that there would be no further review. If those came back for outdoor storage, that would trigger a conditional use permit that would be brought before this board.
But they wouldn't be subject to the 300?
Correct.
Okay, so that's what I meant by saying no review. It's just that issue of the distance, we've already decided tonight. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Jockman, I'll ask one question of staff. So my question is intended with the thought of making sure that we don't create an issue for the city down the road by subdividing the parcels as it pertains to access. From the site plan, we have 2 access points that are proposed. I can see various scenarios that could occur that may cause only one of them to be built, or perhaps one of them could end up being fire. For the parcel on the southeast portion of the site, do we need to be looking at anything with regard to access easements? If there's some way that that parcel, I don't want either of those parcels to end up landlocked and with different owners in the future without adequate easements in place.
If there were, Nathan Gilbert, for the record, if there are any modifications to the proposed road alignment that's being reviewed by the commission tonight, that would be done depending on the scope. I mean, if it was really just modifying the roadway access, that would be done through an administrative determination, which is an appealable decision to council and would be reviewed by all staff before any approval would go out. So engineering staff and all reviewing parties would be part of that decision.
Okay, so you do not see any way that either of those parcels could end up landlocked in a dispute where they could, hold this decision against the city, should this CUP motion be passed?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Williams, I have one for the applicant. Mr. Hasty. Can you explain just the basic reasoning for the exemption for the solid wall? Is it cost? Is it procedure? Is it?
Yeah, I mean.
What are we here? What are they asking for? And I guess why is kind of what I'm hoping to hear.
Yeah, Eric Hasty for the record. It's for economical reasons, right? We're fine. We understand that the intent of the condition is to ensure that there's adequate screening and there's no gaps, and it's going to be something that's going to look attractive. We feel that there is a lot more materials out there that would allow us to do the same thing and not necessarily be for the masonry or concrete wall. That's the reason.
Okay. So economic, but if we were to say that as long as it was solid, would the applicant?
Yeah.
I think what I think of, I just don't want chain link fence. I think when we think about that issue, right, we're trying to avoid something that typically looks ugly. Could that condition just move to a solid fence?
Yeah, and that's
Instead
the language we proposed, and I believe Nathan or somebody from the city might be able to clarify the definition of a solid fence, and that is in code.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Nathan Gilbert. So code requires a solid fence, and again, that could include a wood, a metal, composite, masonry. It gives a lot of options. If the commission would like to entertain the applicant's request, I would suggest just striking condition number 6 because that is code.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
I saw Commissioner Becerra's hand raised. Are you still looking?
Yes. Yeah, I just had
Please proceed.
just a couple questions. I guess probably for you, Eric, and then maybe one or two for Nate. But I think also Commissioner McCoy has touched on a lot of what's been on my mind, so I'll try to keep it brief. I do appreciate you, Eric, for addressing some of the public questions earlier around the potential public usage. That was great. Were there specific neighborhood concerns, though, regarding stored materials or equipment visual impacts or other topics that were raised during the NAB meeting that maybe helped shape or modify what's before us tonight? And I asked because there was a bunch of public comment cards in the packet we received, but a lot of them check marked that they were going to speak verbally during the NAP4 meeting, so it wasn't really clear to me as to what maybe they spoke on. Maybe they're all in favor, maybe there were some concerns, or a mix of both.
Eric Hasty for the record. So from what I remember, I did provide that list of questions that I try to answer as best I can. Those were the ones that I had. Most of them were for the outdoor storage, more interested in the traffic that was generated, the if public would be on there, and what types of fleet vehicles would be stored on there. I don't recall any concerns about the the fencing or what we were proposing at the time, and I don't remember anyone from I don't remember understanding where those neighbors were from in relation to the project.
Okay, all right, great, thanks, Eric. And so I guess I'll move on to a bit of the questions that we heard earlier, but a little different. So for like parcels 2 and 3, there won't be any active building proposals as we heard. What's the immediate stabilization and weed control plan so those exposed pads don't become like an erosion or dust nuisance while they're vacant for a while?
Yeah, Eric Hasty again. So my understanding is they will be required to ensure that there is some, if they're not going to be developed within a reasonable time from when they do the grading, that they will have some long-term type of tackifier or solidifier on there to suppress dust control, and the owner will be responsible for ensuring that is continued.
Commissioner Becerra, if I can add on to that, that's regulated through Northern Nevada Public Health through the Air Quality Division. So they would be required to have a dust palliative put on those parcels if they're not developed.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Eric. And just one last follow-up. And I think maybe Commissioner McCoy touched on this, but I just wanted to make sure I get some clarity on it. Is there geometric flexibility to the shift, to shift the driveway north to achieve like 100% avoidance around the non-404 wetlands rather than rely on mitigation?
Yeah, Eric Hasty for the record. I think that's what, I don't know about shifting it to the north, but I think going into the final design, and once we understand the boundaries of those areas that are defined as wetlands, our goal would be to avoid those any impacts to those, whether it's through putting in walls to help reduce the current grading that's shown in those areas, or whatever. But yes, our goal would be to minimize that as much as possible, understanding that we are going to be having to coordinate efforts with RTC, and at their 60% design that they did provide us, there might already be some impacts to that area based on the expansion of the roadway there.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. That's all the questions I have for now.
Commissioner Del Villar, did you still have a question?
I do, thank you. This is for you, Nathan. Going back to condition 6, because I'm seeing some things in the staff report, what you talked about, and then what the representative sent us. So I'm totally fine if it's a decorative solid fence, and I think it's okay that we leave the condition in there that states that. One question I have is, in your staff report, you talked about 6 feet was not tall enough, but it has to be, I guess is there a height requirement, I guess, for the
Nathan
fence?
Gilbert, 6 feet is the minimum height requirement.
Okay.
It can go up to 10 feet.
Okay.
At the end of the day, outdoor storage standards in code require that the material be completely screened from the public right-of-way.
Okay. And so I just want to make sure that that's clear, because I didn't think it was clear. So if we're going to have that condition or rewrite it, I think it would be good if we stated that. And I think that Eric tried to do that in areas visible from public right-of-way. But then also in his rewritten or their rewritten condition, it says areas not visible from the right-of-way may be chain link fencing. Is that correct, or is
that was the condition as written in your staff report, specifically. Condition 6 recommends a decorative masonry or precast concrete wall around the storage area for areas visible from the public right-of-way. Areas not visible from the right-of-way may be slatted chain link fence.
Okay, perfect, because I didn't see that in the staff report, so I just wanted to confirm that. Okay, I just wanted clarification on those. That was all. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, let's move to deliberation. Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner McCoy for the record. I appreciate staff's willingness to hop up and put a memo together for us. I was reading the staff report, looking at the major deviations, and really trying to ascertain finding number 2, really trying to see how this meets the findings that we have to make. And when the staff report didn't even address it, I was a little concerned, like maybe I'm just missing something. So I do appreciate the memorandum and the quick turnaround on that. It does say that the kind of intent is really solely to request relief from RMC 1804-1403. And then it really seems to me like this is a method or a procedural tool we're trying to use to deal with that adjacency issue. And I am struggling with the finding for number 2 because of that. It almost seems like it's, well, if we have this, then we can do this, as opposed to we need this, and this is why it's better, or this is why the public benefits. And, you know, the applicant, when asked, was, you know, one of the issues is they want this, their applicant wants this visible to Virginia Street. I don't know why that is significant or not. They've indicated this isn't going to be customer-based. This is going to be employees coming here back and forth. So I'm still struggling tonight with that specific finding. That, you know, the reality is, I think, and this is what came up at the NAB hearing as well, we're trying to preserve 2 parcels in the back, which obviously has an economic private gain for the applicant, by not moving this project to the east, where it would meet all the zoning requirements. And so that's just kind of where I am. And I was hoping to get some clarity from that tonight for the presentation, and I just don't think I did. But I'll leave it there.
Commissioner Velto.
So on major deviation finding number 2, I view this as a relatively lenient finding. The language is enhances overall design of the project or operations of the project or the public benefit. And I've added in those ors because there's commas there. So I think generally if the applicant can say that it affects the design of the project in a way that helps them, or it helps their operation of the project, which I think, you know, there being a financial reason for it does help the operation of the project. I view this as a fairly lenient test for us to try to decide whether finding 2 can be met. And that's how I've kind of always approached it. So I think, you know, typically if they can offer any reason that fits under design of the project or operations, I tend to feel comfortable under that finding. And I'd be willing to hear more from the applicant if there's more rationale, if the chair would permit that.
So I guess you're seeking to go back into questions. Yeah.
Just a question on that finding.
Yeah, that would be acceptable. Would you like to? Yeah, go ahead.
Please. So would you help us understand why the major deviation improves the overall design of the project or the operations of the project?
Yeah, Eric Casey for the record. So my understanding is that the major deviation would be required on parcel 2 and 3 as well, because we still have residential adjacency. So you'd still need to either set back the outdoor storage 300 feet, which from the south, that's going into those steeper slopes. So it's a balancing act of trying to making sure that we're not grading the site and we're meeting hillside development standards, and also allowing for the use of the site in a way that is beneficial. So my understanding is that major deviation would be required on any one of these parcels that we're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
So we are in deliberations at this time. I guess Commissioner Giacomo, I appreciate the thoughts from both of you on this one. The second major deviation finding, it does read as enhance the overall design of the project. I can see, and I recognize that it's tough for an applicant to say maybe the project's not viable without some of these deviations. If specifically the 150-foot deviation were not granted, I could see how it could be detrimental to the project. So I'm inclined to align there with Commissioner Velto in your interpretation of the second major deviation finding, because I can see without that, you do not enhance the overall design of the project to its primary use. Commissioner Del Villar.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is going to actually come up in our next section where we talk about training and findings. And I think this is one of the ones that's always confused me. And maybe it's because there's all the or, commas. Because, and maybe this is something that the city needs to look at and we need to redefine it. Because to me, again, it's not necessarily enhancing the public, and yes, I understand that it might be helping the business owner from that standpoint. And so when we come into these findings, it is sort of hard to. It's like I'm not sure if we're supposed to pick one and go with that or what. But and again, maybe a better option would be to look at. Rewriting it and reevaluating how it's worded so it's not so or if that makes sense, because that's where I always find it difficult because I'm looking to fulfill it all, basically, not just pick one that's convenient, if you will. And so, but I appreciate the conversation and understand again how it would benefit from an operational standpoint. Thank you.
I guess, go ahead, Commissioner Williams.
Okay. I think if parcel 1 was being delivered to us tonight, isolated from 2 and 3, my thoughts on it would be that it's close. I understand based upon where it needs to be placed, and I would probably still stick to that. That means we even should do more to block the view, which means going back to that decorative thing. I think just the perception is that we're building what we want and then preserving these very, nice future parcels. And I just, unfortunately, I think it comes off a little, getting your cake and ice cream too. So I think I can understand where you're coming from. And I think that if this moves forward, I kind of probably would more lean to keeping the current condition for the rock wall. I think if we're going to give an applicant kind of everything they want, I don't see why we can't just stick to something that we could look back to and say, yeah, we did this and we made it closer to these houses, but we also stuck to us on this aesthetics aspect that would make it look much better than just some kind of random other solid fencing. So those are just kind of my comments to wrap it up.
Commissioner Giacomo, I'll add one more thing to this. So the way I kind of look at, we'll say, what's parcel 1 on the figure, there's 2 limiting factors for me, and obviously they're requesting a deviation to the south. Now, what's going on in the north is about traffic, and so if you were to take the exact same site plan and just move it north, I recognize there's questions there that would pertain to grading, but you're not actually going to be able to do that, and it wouldn't necessarily be under our purview to grant an exception to that. That would be, basically the limiting factor on this site plan is that access point ties into that intersection. So in ways that renders parts of the northern part of the site, it's encumbered in terms of development. So in order to achieve that safety benefit of having the access point tie in at the intersection, you've got to deviate somewhere to the south. And holistically, I don't know if that's what went through the site planning process on this one, but I can see that you'll have to pick between one of those two if you want to achieve the project that's before us. So I would be in favor, when I view it as either or, certainly in favor of granting this deviation and making that finding, because moving the site to the north would be detrimental in another way that has yet to be discussed.
This is Commissioner Becerra. Would it make sense to consider refining condition 7 just to have the deviation specific to that southern boundary and all other residential adjacency and screening standards under like Article or Title 14 remain fully applicable to all other property borders, specifically to the western fronting properties across North Virginia Street?
Commissioner Becerra, I guess I'm a little confused. Are you saying stick to the staff recommended condition for just the southern and not the western?
Correct, because are you concerned, Commissioner Williams, about like applying the exception, I guess, or the deviation across all parcels?
No, I think I was more concerned about the western being that's what we're infringing on as far as residential adjacency. So,
Okay.
but, I mean, I could do southern, yeah, okay.
I just, for me, and Commissioner Williams is Commissioner McCoy for the record, you kind of talked about if we were just seeing parcel 1 tonight, if this was the only property we're looking at, I could see where they might be making an argument about we can't this, we can't that. The reality is we're being asked to look at this entire piece. Some of the findings we're making, what we're talking about applies to this entire property piece. And so what I'm looking for this and it's a major deviation, and I understand historically we may be looking at it as like this is an easy one, no big deal. To me, when I hear and see the words major, I'm thinking, okay, this is something significant. I also recognize that I believe the code was recently amended. So it used to be 150 feet was the adjacency requirement. And we just amended that maybe last year, is that right, Mike? To make it 300. So it was something that we thought was significant enough to just say, all right, no, you know what, we want to have this 300 feet. I wasn't there for, when that change, but that's my understanding is that we just made that change. Got to be a reason for it. So what I'm struggling with is if we're looking at the entire picture, we don't even have a comparison to say, if we did put this parcel 1 in the center where it doesn't need a major deviation, this is what we're comparing it to. Instead, we're just carving off half the property and holding that out, wholesale for other future economic development for the property owner, and then just saying, well, this is what we have, instead of what we could do something else. And I appreciate the opportunity to ask the question again. Still didn't answer the question. And I understand there are ors and commas, kind of a basic thing you get in law school your first year. So I'm not concerned about that. I am just concerned that a major deviation for me requires more than what I've seen in the record tonight. And I'll leave it at that. I agree with the idea about limiting condition 7, but with my struggle with the finding 2, I don't know that's not something I'm gonna fight for right now.
Any other deliberations? Commissioner Velto?
Commissioner McCoy, this was brought up earlier. Would you feel more comfortable if this change only applied to future parcel 1?
If I were confident with finding 2, I would absolutely be supportive of that.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to weigh in at this time as to the need for the major deviation as it pertains to the proposed set of 3 parcels? And if you need time to speak with I know you're the representative, if you need time to speak with the applicant, that's fine as well.
I'd like to request just a few minutes to speak with the applicant. Just to see.
Sure, please take your time. We'll stay on.
Real quick, do you mind before, I have another request.
Commissioner
to speak to the
Velto,
applicant. In addition to that, would you feel comfortable also asking whether you need more time beyond this meeting to try to get information that would help you with this?
That's what I'm going to be.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, please take a minute to deliberate with the applicant. Sure, why don't we take would you like a few minutes to speak with the applicant? Okay, Mr. Hasty said yes, so we're going to take a 3-minute break. Please do not speak about the item while we are adjourned. We'll return at 8:17. Prior to that, we asked the applicant had some time to deliberate with the applicant representative. Mr. Hasty.
Eric Hasty, thank you for the time. Understand what you're saying, and I think we would be comfortable with either limiting it to only parcel 1, or reevaluating, if we were to reevaluate where we would move that, because the major deviation would be required on either parcel 2 or 3 or 1. If we were to move that off of Virginia Street, we would need additional time to see how that would look, so.
Okay, so am I correct in understanding your response that you are amenable to the southern portion, but not the deviation from Virginia Street, the west side?
My understanding is that we would still need a deviation, because we can't be located within 300 feet. And so that would require us to move the outdoor storage off of parcel 1 and onto parcel 2 or 3. And so we would need to evaluate that and see if that would work.
Commissioner Valto.
So I feel comfortable making a motion at least to have the major deviation to reduce residential adjacency distance apply only to parcel 1. That's something the applicant's agreeable to?
Okay, so the applicant, you're indicating a yes to that? There was added stuff which got me a little confused.
Parcel 1,
Okay,
yes.
that's a yes, okay.
Commissioner Del Villar, for the applicant, I don't even know how to ask this. Would you prefer one or the other option? Would you prefer parcel 1, we look at that? Or would
I
you?
prefer parcel 1, if we don't know what's
To
going to
make
go
a
on 2 and 3
decision.
yet. And
Okay.
so we don't even know if that's necessary. So we're fine with just that applying to, the major deviation applying to parcel 1.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
My only question here, Commissioner Jockman, is does staff want to weigh in on how we, the verbiage for how we add that additional condition?
Nathan Gilbert, I'll take a stab. I think just adding after the period, saying this condition, something to the effect of this condition is applicable to parcel 1 as illustrated in project materials.
Perfect, okay, thank you. Any other deliberation from the commission?
Question on that, I'm sorry, don't want to screw up this motion. Is it that the major deviation is only applicable to parcel 1, or the conditional use permit and the major deviation?
The major deviation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so I believe we have a condition that may be, a motion that may be made with modified conditions 6, 10, and an additional condition. Are there any other conditions we're looking at modifying? And I pose that at anyone from the commission.
I guess we still have the fencing. One that
That's-
there was some talk about.
I believe
You
that's
already
under
added it?
condition 6.
Okay, great.
So that one's been addressed.
So that would be not modifying condition 6, or modifying it solely on the western part of the parcel. Those were the kind of two proposals.
Right. Madam Clerk, would it be possible to show the slide with the proposed modified verbiage for condition 6? It was roughly in the middle of the presentation.
The staff presentation or the applicant?
I think if we just go back to requiring a solid fence, it was to scratch all of that and just leave it under code. Scratch the entire condition, correct? Nathan, right? Okay.
Okay, so the situation's a bit dynamic. Now we're talking about scratching condition 6. If we do that in a condition, let's just state that for the record.
Okay. And then what was the modification on condition 10?
So I apologize, Madam Clerk, could you please now present the slide with the modified verbiage for condition 10?
Thank you, Chair. I can find that in here, actually.
Mr. Hasty, did you want to help guide her to that slide, or?
It was to strike language in the middle, which says, which establishes the location and physical limits of the wetlands in accordance with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers regulations.
Okay, so I'm hearing that the motion that will be made is to remove condition 6, modifications to condition 10 as presented by the applicant, and the addition of one additional condition. Whoever would like to make that motion, please proceed.
I have a quick question
yes.
about, I'm so sorry, about this Commissioner Del Villar. So we're removing condition 6, which was a requirement to have a decorative masonry wall now? Would there be any condition to screen from the roadway?
That would revert back to code, which requires a solid screen that all.
Okay, I got you. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
I have condition number 6, removal, condition number 10, modification. The additional condition was?
That the
Oh, gotcha.
major
Yep.
deviation would only apply to the potential parcel 1 as shown under the staff exhibits.
I am ready to make a motion.
Please proceed.
In the matter of case number LDC 26-00091, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit and major deviations subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, except that the major deviation will only be applicable to parcel 1 in the staff report. Condition number 6 shall be removed, and condition number 10 shall be modified to remove the following language, quote, which establishes the location and physical limits of the wetland in accordance with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, USACE regulations. And I can make all the findings.
Commissioner Williams, I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed?
We have a motion that carries 6-1 with the opposition from Commissioner McCoy. Motion carries. That concludes item D3. We will now move on to item E2. This is a Planning Commission training on the importance of findings and making defensible land use decisions. Ms. Foos.
I feel like it is very good timing that we're having this discussion after tonight's discussion. For the record, I'm Angela Foos. I'm the Assistant Director for Development Services. We have 2 trainings before you tonight. We had a request for both kind of ish, and so we wanted to normally not stack you up with trainings, but again, these are both relevant, and timing-wise, we had a request to get both these on the agenda. So big picture today, we're going to talk about what is the Planning Commission's role when it comes to land use. You guys are not subject matter experts, and we don't expect you to be. If we wanted you to be architects and engineers and land use planners, we would have required that on the application. We do not. We actually like it that you don't come with a background knowing everything. We like to have a general kind of broader perspective when it comes to land use decisions. So the role you have is not expected to be the expert on anything related to land use. Just know that. It's great that some of you are experts, but that is not your job to be the expert. And you're advisors, right? You read the information, you listen to the public, and you advise on land use decisions. Now, one thing we want to make sure that we're not doing is advocating. And as an example, let's say you're really passionate about affordable housing. Great. Let's say a project comes before you and it's for a housing project, just apartments, regular market rate apartments. And you say, I can't support this because it doesn't have an affordability component. And so you recommend denial. That's going to get us as the city in trouble. There's no requirement that says you have to have an affordable housing project. So anytime you guys make decisions, make sure you're not advocating on some personal reasons or some personal preference. And oftentimes we have, big meetings where the public comes out and they say, I don't want apartments in my neighborhood. And you say, yeah, I don't like apartments either. I'm gonna vote no because I don't like apartments either. No, don't do that. That is a bad idea. And again, it will get us into trouble. As commissioners, again, you should be making rational decisions based on law, based on information in the staff report, and not based on preferences. Now we use findings, and this is universal, right? All jurisdictions have findings when it comes to entitlements. And they're all different. There's no one set of findings that all planners use. And so for Reno, we have findings different for tentative maps, or conditional use permits, or zone changes. And at the end of when you vote, you have to point to those findings and say, okay, can I make these findings? Now keep in mind too, findings are not black and white. All our jobs would be so much easier if we could just check a box and say, yep, we have to have at least 5 houses, you've checked that box. Yep, you have to have a fence, you check that box. Findings aren't that black and white, which is why there's this gray area, which is why there's a planning commission that gets to make land use decisions. Now, what we'd like you to do is actually read the staff report, listen to the testimony, find out, why the technical subject matter experts, including city planners, city engineers, public works, RTC, all these people that actually have a background in these very specific technical reports, find out why they made these recommendations and say, okay, I can back this up because there's some kind of information to substantiate why this should or should not be approved the way it's been designed. One of the biggest challenges we have is that I think a lot of times the general public seems to think that we have a say in what use comes before us. They say, well, great. Well, why can't we get an In-N-Out burger here? Why is it Burger King? Why doesn't the city go market to In-N-Out burger? That is not our role. It would be great if we could play SimCity and actually build the city the way we all want to, but we cannot. So keep in mind too that a lot of times there's this confusion with the public of, well, it's zoned mixed use. So why are you putting housing here? And why are you putting commercial here? And why are you putting industrial here? Mixed use zoning allows all those uses. So our job when those projects come in is to say, let's mitigate your impacts. All the things that we talk about, right? Have you put in a fence that mitigates the noise? Have you put in lighting that makes sure it's not shining on the neighbors? All those things is what you guys get to review and say, okay, I can read the information and say, yep, you have mitigated that project's impacts and that use is allowed in that zoning district. The big thing that we deal with when you read our staff report, and keep in mind, by the time you see a staff report, we've spent 2 to 4 months working on it. No project comes before us and is a green light and goes straight to you. 99.9% of every project we look at, we require changes. And that is this give and take of, okay, you've submitted your project, but have you mitigated the impacts? We look at all the things that you look at, and we add these conditions. That is our job as city planners. That is your job also as planning commissioners to say, okay, have you mitigated it enough? Your fence discussion tonight. Well, what if they wanted to put a chain link fence? Would that have been enough to protect those neighbors? Probably not. And our code requires a solid fence in that situation. So let's have a discussion about fencing. Well, what if it's a 6-foot fence? Probably doesn't really block a lot of noise. Well, what if it's a masonry fence? Probably blocks noise better than if it was just a 6-foot tall wood fence. So all of that goes into our decision-making and our conditions of approval that, again, you guys look at and say, okay, have they mitigated the impacts? Now, we are never going to make everybody happy and know that. Anyone can look at this site. Each of you will come up with a different set of conditions. That's okay, right? Because it's not black and white. But again, to make it defensible, we have to say, has this been addressed? Yes or no? And you may say, yeah, but not to my standard. Well, let's make sure we understand what your standard is meets our code standard. If the code says you have to have a solid wall, okay, and you feel it needs to be maybe 5 feet thick, whoa, there's nothing in code that says it has to be 5 feet thick. So I would be cautious about putting in your own personal preferences about what you think would protect those neighbors. So again, keep in mind there is this balance of, yes, they have met the minimum requirements. Do we have to go above and beyond that? Sometimes, and that's that give and take that we usually do when we're working with developers before it even comes to you guys. The administrative record. Anytime we get into trouble, and this goes to a lawsuit, the administrative record is all those things listed. Now, most of the time, if it's a project that comes before you, and let's say it's denied or approved and it gets appealed, and then it goes to city council. I think a lot of times our planning commission feels like, well, our decision doesn't really matter because ultimately it can be appealed and city council is the final authority. But keep in mind, anything that goes to a lawsuit, everything you say and do is part of the administrative record. So if the courts disagree and say, boy, that planning commission went rogue and they put on a lot of conditions that really made no sense, it was above and beyond code, that you had personal preferences in there, that will hurt the city at the end. And we have had very specific cases where it went to court and we lost and taxpayers had to pay millions of dollars to pay the developer. So know that your decisions and your words definitely matter. All of it's taken into account. Public testimony, absolutely. You know, I feel like the public often feels like we ignore them, and we don't, right? They have to understand where you're at. Your decision is not, again, I don't like In-N-Out burgers, so I'm just gonna flat deny every In-N-Out burger. You cannot do that. You have to say, a drive-through is allowed here, they've mitigated the impacts, I don't have a reason to deny it other than, you know, I like Burger King better than In-N-Out. Don't do that. So just make sure that, again, when you're making decisions and you're saying those words out loud, know that at some point it could end up in a lawsuit and that could be used against us. When you go back to the findings, go back and read the finding and say, okay, is there something in our code that I can point to say, yep, this supports that finding, or no, this doesn't. As another example, we have some findings of, you know, does it protect the environment? And what does that mean to you? I'll get probably 7 different answers because that means something different. I can tell you from a zoning code perspective, that's wetlands, it's drainage way, it's air quality. And you're like, okay, well, they're touching wetlands. So I'm gonna vote no because they're touching wetlands. No, you can touch wetlands. You just have to mitigate your impacts. So again, the question is, what section of code could I defensively use to say why I'm gonna vote no on this project? Or why I'm going to vote yes, because again, you've added conditions that mitigate the impacts. And make sure it's just logical. You know, a lot of times when we're making land use decisions, especially when there's a lot of public, we tend to think, gosh, the neighbors really don't want this use. I understand where they're coming from. I'm going to do my best to really just, you know, take care of the negative impacts. But when you're saying the words and adding conditions, make it logical. You can't just make something up. It has to be tied to the code. We've had a lot of live entertainment type of discussions where you have a bar and they want to do live entertainment. You know, and we say, well, you know, what are we doing about that back door that leads into an alley? You know, I think we should add some regulations that say you can't open that back door that leads into the alley anytime after midnight. Okay. You know how hard that is for us to enforce? We're not out there at midnight. It's really, really challenging. And the fact that the business owner's like, well, I got to take the trash out. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, I gotta take it out in the alley. Well, no, you can't. We're not gonna let you do that because we've added a condition that says you cannot open that back door after midnight. So again, make sure what you're doing is logical and that it's measurable, something that we can justify and say, yep, this is black and white. We have the ability to enforce it. A lot of times we get these conditions that we cannot enforce. This one's kind of my favorite. Do you remember when Oprah, you know, would have these like holiday specials and you get a car and you get a car? And that's what I feel like sometimes these conditions of approval are. You get a wetland mitigation plan, and you get a requirement for no lights. Like, no. Make sure it's enforceable. Make sure it's measurable. Don't make it just because, oh, I think we should do this. It would be so great if we did this. No. Make it sure it's something that We as staff have the ability to go back and say, that is black and white, I can enforce that. When we as staff write these conditions, we've thought about it most of the time. You know, we've said, okay, is this something that our code enforcement team has the ability to say, okay, we can address this. Noise is probably one of my favorite ones. And by favorite, I mean least favorite. We get a lot of complaints from people saying, it's really noisy next door to me. You know, maybe it's a business that operates 24 hours a day. City of Reno, it's too loud. What are you gonna do? We go to code enforcement. What do you guys think? Is it too loud? I don't know. What's the definition of too loud? We go back to our code. We can enforce what the code says. Code says, here's a decibel level. That's black and white. We go out there with our little noise meter and we measure noise and we can say, you know what? They're within the allowed threshold for noise. But when you put on random conditions, they're like, 49 decibels. That's what I think's too loud. I mean, I'm 49 decibels right now. Like, we can't enforce something if you're making it up on the fly. So follow code. If you have questions, again, use staff. All right, now it's time for you guys to talk. Example number 1. Let's say you have a case that you're reviewing. It's in North Valleys. We've had a ton of these kind of mini storage, RV storage. One of the commissioners says, gosh, you know, North Valleys already has too many storage units, and I can't support this project. Would that be a good thing to say on the record? A good reason to deny a project? Of course not. We've had that happen. Let's not say that. Example number 2. You know, the neighbors have really raised some valid concerns, and I don't think it's been addressed. Therefore, I'm not going to support this project. Why are those words not good to use? There's no specificity in that. Tell me exactly what the concerns are. Is it quantifiable? Well, the neighbors think it's going to be loud, so I can't support it because the neighbors think it's going to be loud. Well, wait a minute. Didn't we make them do a noise study? And we said, you cannot exceed 65 decibels. Yeah, but the neighbors think it's going to be loud, so we should say no. No, I would go back then and say, we have addressed noise. We've put in a noise threshold as a condition of approval. So we have to be very black and white with why we're saying I can or cannot support this. Go back to a fact that's measurable. And again, we can empathize all day, but you have to put something measurable that we can enforce. Okay, this is a fun one too. We get a lot of projects that are residential and infill areas. I think the project fits and I can support this application. Why does it fit? Tell me specifically why it fits. Jacob, I feel like you want to say something.
That we are required to make, correct?
And maybe
I mean,
another
that's
way to
maybe
say
me.
it is, you know, it's a 2-story building, and in a neighborhood with 1 and 2 stories, I feel like it's size-wise, height-wise. I feel like from cars, you know, they have, 5 parking spaces. I feel like they're not going to negatively impact the neighborhood. All those things you can quantify and say, here's how I can make the findings. Rather than, oh, it's a craftsman design, and I think it totally fits in the Old Southwest. No. We don't regulate craftsman design. I don't care what it looks like. It could be a pink 1990s house. Go with something in the code that we can go back to and say, here's why it fits. Because again, when it gets appealed and goes to council, they look at your testimony and say, why did it fit? Okay. Let's say you said this again. You know, because the traffic study demonstrates that it's acceptable levels of service, and the Public Works Department concurs and is in support of the proposed traffic mitigation, so I can make the findings. Now, the good thing about this is you're going back to the information in the staff report and the traffic study, and you're saying, there was a traffic study, it has acceptable levels of service, right? That is a black and white. We know if it meets levels of service because we have a standard. As long as you're within that, you can meet that. Okay, that doesn't mean the project's a yes or no. Let's go a little bit further. And you know what? They're also putting in maybe a decel lane. So they're mitigating their impacts. And the Public Works Department has signed off. I've seen it in the staff report. I can support this. Those would be good types of things to say as to how you can make those findings. Okay, that's it for quizzes. Any questions on this topic? Yes.
I can make the findings, and when should we be explaining which evidence actually supports the required findings? I've seen a lot of that where it's just, I can make the findings, I can make, and there are no, yes, we can make them, but are we going to? And do we need to, more specifically? Because you're talking about these specifics, is that what we need to do on every project?
No, not necessarily. If you're not able to make the findings, you 100% should say specifically why you can't make the findings.
Okay.
I think that the fact that we have a staff report that would typically support the findings, you can say, I concur with the staff report and I can make the findings. And usually you would say, because of the conditions of approval that have been added, I feel like, the impacts have been mitigated and I can make the findings.
I have a follow-up question to that. So I see the logic when oftentimes we can just assume that the applicant or applicant team may have legal representation. What about those cases when there is legal representation in opposition? Is that always holding true? If we don't articulate some of those findings and they come up,
I don't think
what's
it
most
hurts.
prudent for the city?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it hurts. If there's something, especially if you're hearing, well, the biggest issue is traffic on this case, or it doesn't fit with the neighborhood. And so that, okay, those are the issues from the public. It definitely doesn't hurt to say, here's how I can say that it addresses traffic, or here's how I can finding, whatever, number 2, compatibility with the neighborhood. That just makes our case even stronger. And again, it doesn't hurt us to say those things.
Okay, thank you.
I got another one.
Commissioner, sorry, she raised her hand. Commissioner Del Villar.
Thank you. So yeah, I have a couple of, I guess, I don't know, comments or things that I think would be really helpful. So first, one of your examples was the affordable housing, right? And I get that, it might be passion of some people and everything, but what happens when we're in here is everybody comes up and they say, this supports the middle. And so that's completely undefined for us. And so we're trying to figure out, well, if it supports the middle, what does that even mean? And is that affordable? And what is affordable here, right? And so some sort of definitions would be helpful for us, or use a different language maybe, because that word always kind of gets people going. But that's part of what we're supposed to be looking at, and it is hard because what does that even mean, right?
I think housing is probably one of our bigger challenges. We don't have any requirements that you have to have housing. You could build all custom lots, $1 million homes. We don't have any regulations that say you have to do missing middle or affordable or
missing middle. That was it.
homes.
I knew it was somebody was in the middle.
Yeah, and I think what we're hearing from a policy perspective, and it goes back to our master plan, right? The master plan doesn't say what you have to do or not do. It's big picture. The master plan says we need housing of all types. And so I think, in making your decisions, you can say, you know what, while this is a dense project, and I know we're getting some pushback from the neighbors because it might be too dense for them. We also, as a policy, are really pushing for different types of housing, whether it's townhomes or apartments or duplexes. And I feel like this, contributes to that missing middle, which is something, the city of Reno needs more of.
Right. And again, I think missing middle is maybe poorly defined. I think that's part of the problem. The other, and this kind of goes to a bigger picture, and I've talked about this for a while now. We tend to get the information the Friday before the meeting, and there's a lot of information in there, but we're kind of missing. To your point, it's just the conversations and the mitigations and the concessions have been going on for a long time, and so we don't have some of that background. Certainly the public doesn't have some of that background. And some of it would be helpful as I'm going through these, looking through everything and having conversations to know, because what we see is like a rubber stamp from, the fire marshal said yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know that, they've had long-term conversations about it and that they've already made concessions about it.
Yeah.
And so there are some things that in my mind are kind of missing, and I'm sorry, kind of recommending we get more information and maybe, have a longer period of time to look at it, even a few days would be helpful, at least for me. Because then I'm not asking questions that because sometimes I feel like we're asking questions and you guys are like, oh, we already dealt with that. And it's like, well, I don't know that, right? Or I don't know where it came from or how it went. And maybe that's not part of my purview, but it would certainly help me understand so that I can make the findings a little better.
Yeah, and I think that's something we as staff can do better, either through our staff report, talk about, hey, initially they'd submitted a chain link fence with slats, and we felt that in order to mitigate the noise of this use next to residents, we asked them to put in a masonry wall. So I think that's
Right.
something we could do a better job, either in our presentation or the staff report, that would help you guys.
Right, and again, for them, it's intuitive to them and
Yeah.
it's innate, right? But for us, it just is helpful to have a little bit more background information.
Yeah.
So that, again, we have that information going into it, and we can either ask better questions or our questions have already been answered.
Yeah.
So
Definitely
anyway,
better for the public too, because I think they feel the same way that,
yeah.
they didn't have input and nobody's listening.
right,
Yeah.
right. And I think from a marketing strategist, so I'm always like, how can we help not just us, but the public understand? And I get comments from people saying, well, 200 people showed up and were opposed to it. And it's like, well, that's not our job. Our job is to, again, look at what's been presented, what our code says, what we're supposed to be doing, and what we are literally advising on or ruling on. And so I think it's hard for them to understand sometimes the decisions that are made because they don't understand the process.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a way to sort of help them with that. Anyway, that's all. That's all I had.
Great.
Comment and then a question. I really like Commissioner Del Viero's idea of like a procedural history. I understand every time we ask for something that's more work on staff, so something brief that's just like,
Yeah.
these were concessions made, these are how the project changed, and at the discretion of y'all staff, that might be really helpful for us, especially for the really contentious projects, just to see like how far we've come would be super helpful for us.
Yeah.
And then a question, I know this comes up a lot, especially with the contentious projects. You have the applicant come up and say, here are 10 policies that support what we're doing. And then you have people in opposition say, here are 30 policies. Help us understand how we're supposed to evaluate those.
That is one of our challenges. We have a beautiful master plan document. It's several hundred pages, and it is full of policies that go every direction. Big picture, when we're looking at a staff report, we say, okay, do we have any policies that this project supports? Industrial is a great example, right? We have a lot of industrial, and if a new project comes in, it's industrial, it's like, gosh, do we need more industrial? But we can go to our master plan and be like, North Virginia is where industrial has been planned for a number of years. Now, we don't like it next to residential, so that doesn't comply with our master plan, but that particular area for several decades is where we said, that's where we want to focus industrial. So it's that give and take of, we have language in the master plan that says we can put industrial here, and then we go back to our zoning code and say, how did we mitigate those negative impacts? So it's really kind of a intertwined process. And for every case you give us, we can find 10 reasons yes and 10 reasons no, based on the master plan policy. So think of it as more of a big picture. There's no right or wrong on that either.
So I'd like to ask a question as a piggyback to that, because that's exactly the finding that I guess maybe as an engineer I dislike the most, which is consistency with the Reno master plan. And so it literally says weigh competing plan goals and policies. There's times where, like, if I were to wear my political sleeve on my chest, which I try not to do, but it's that I like housing and I want more housing. But I recognize that I'm just here to focus on the master plan. Fortunately, that also wants housing. So, okay, that's easy enough, but there's times where I can see, oh, well, should we be foregoing some of these other goals? And when it comes to policies, like, it's almost like it's maybe other findings. How do I articulate an opinion within the confines of that finding without creating anything that's legally detrimental to the city? That's my question, when I can see some of those things at friction.
And I would go back to big picture. Industrial versus residential is a great example, right? Somebody comes in for a zone change, they want to change the residential zoning to industrial. We need both. So let's be real, right? We need industrial. That's our tax base. If we only build housing, our city will die. I mean, Sparks is in a very challenging predicament because they have a ton of housing, not a lot of industrial and business. That's where your taxes come from. So if you don't build industrial and non-residential, your tax base will flip upside down, and again, you can't afford to keep up. So we understand that we need both. We don't always love industrial because generally it's not high-paying jobs. Generally, it's a lot of, semi-trucks and noisy. So that's that balance of, okay, we know we need both, but wherever it's being proposed, is it an appropriate location? We have a lot of developers that come to us and they have land and they say, I want to do industrial here. I'm like, oh my God, you are surrounded by residential, you're surrounded by a school. Like, we can't get to yes on this. This doesn't meet anything. Well, but you need industrial, so you guys should vote yes. I'm like, you have to understand, we don't just say yes to everything. We have to have some logic behind it, right? Are you near a railroad track? Is there any other industrial anywhere near you? Well, no, not for 2 miles, but I really feel like you could, have industrial here. We're like, no. We look at that as well and say, big picture, yeah, there's master plan policies to support that the city needs industrial, but it has to be at the right location. And so all of that gets, taken into consideration.
Can I also, because again, I think this is part of the image issue that we have, and you've talked about this before, and Lee has talked about it before, and Jeff, there's a lot of things that get rejected before they even come to us. And there are some very good reasons. And I think somehow helping the public understand that, we're not just, putting everything, we are looking at the code, we are looking at the master plan, we are rejecting a lot. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm sure it's actually pretty significant. And again, just somehow helping the public understand that like this is the job on this side, and we do reject things because they don't fit with what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think your point though, like we need to tell the story better of how we got to yes on this one.
Yeah.
And all the things that they had to concede on because we couldn't get to yes the way they wanted it. I think that really will help.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do have a second presentation, right?
We do.
Would you like to proceed with that, Ms. Foos? Do we have any other questions at this time?
Commissioner McCoy, for the record, I indicated I had a couple of questions when I started earlier, but I wasn't sure if I was supposed to wait for everybody else to ask one, or if I was going to come back to me at some point or not. But here we are, and I'll just try to limit it to two, because I did review your presentations before coming, so that I could have questions in mind, because this is important to me. When a reviewing agency says it has no objection, I've seen those from fire, or they identify no issues, how far can we rely on that? And the example I was thinking of was fire addresses, one particular issue. Does that support the whole entire? It's safe. There's no issues there. I mean, do we worry about fire, REMSA, police? What are we looking at? Because it's just I just see this. Fire has no issue, and then we just move on. Like, is that? It's almost like it's a checkbox. So what is my role as a commissioner to do with that? Check that fire is signed off and move on to the next point, or am I still considering other factors with regards to safety?
Keep in mind, at a tentative level, a conditional use permit, it's not a building permit. A tentative map, it's not a building permit for a house. These are conceptual. So when the fire department's looking at any of these entitlements, they look at high level. They're not looking at where fire hydrants are, because it hasn't been designed yet. They're looking at, do we have two ways in and two ways out? They're looking high level at big picture stuff. They're not looking to see, well, are they going to build it with fire sprinklers? Like they don't have that design yet. So keep in mind that this is one step in the process. They look super high level. By the time we get to a building permit, they're doing a much more in-depth review, especially anything with industrial, right? What are we storing in the building? You guys don't look at that. You don't know what chemicals are in there or where the fire riser rooms are. That's not your role. That's a building code and fire code rule. That's their purview. So really at the building permit is when they get to the nuts and bolts of what's inside, how's the building being designed. But at a planning commission level, they're looking at big things. Is access, achievable based on our codes? Where's the nearest fire station? We have a lot of issues with fire stations now because as our community is growing, we need more fire stations. So they will look at it and say, oh, you're 12 minutes away from the nearest fire station. So we're going to require a condition that you put in fire sprinklers. So they're looking at that at the conditional use permit level. But if they missed it, they would catch it at building permit. We trigger all those things at building permit.
So primarily, we're just expecting them, or looking for them to see if they've flagged anything. And if they haven't flagged anything, then more specific review is going to happen later, which leads into my last question, which is, I'm still trying to figure out where the entitlement review stops and the building permit kind of review begins, because, it's Title 18 findings up, they'll do that later. What exactly are we supposed to be, kind of looking for, and how can we navigate the distinction between making the findings that Title 18 is there and letting that actually happen down the road?
That is presentation number 2. So if you want to hold that one. Perfect. And I sent the same presentation. I didn't realize I sent the same presentation. So if you looked at both and said, this looks very similar, I fixed that before walking into the room.
Let's proceed with that second presentation, unless anyone has a question.
Okay, so this one is really to kind of walk you through the difference when you get a project before you, and then, again, it could be a conditional use permit, major deviation, tentative map. What's the difference between that and when it goes to a building permit? Two very different processes. I would say probably the biggest reviewer during a zoning case is planning staff. Engineering looks at it at a high level. They're not looking at, the curve of the sewer line, and is it 90 degrees or 80 degrees? That's at a building permit. Again, high level, do you have sewer lines, do you have water lines, do you have storm drain? Even think about what we require. So every, permit for a new building, we're like, we need a preliminary grading plan. It's not a final grading plan. We need a preliminary hydrology. How's it gonna drain? All those things are preliminary. So again, the biggest ones that review it are the planners, because they're making sure it meets our zoning code. That's 600-page document, and we have to go through a lot of details. When it gets to a building permit, it's basically everything technical related to the building itself. At a building permit stage, the biggest reviewer is our building department and our fire department. They're looking at the structure of the building. Does it meet all the mechanical regulations and electrical regulations? The fire department's looking at it to make sure, they put in fire sprinklers that meet all the codes, that there's hydrants stationed outside in the right areas. That's not stuff we look at the zoning level. It's super high level at the zoning level, but it's big picture, right? We know the use would be allowed at the zoning level. We're not looking at that at the building permit level because we've already addressed that. So from that perspective, two very different processes, but know that every building permit also gets reviewed by a planner. We process about 10,000 building permits a year. Some are small, like a new HVAC unit or a water heater. Not a lot of planning involved in that. But most of the building permits we get that you guys don't see know that our planners are looking at it for, does it meet setbacks? Does it meet landscape requirements and parking requirements? So there's a lot of kind of overlap in what you guys see and what goes in for a building permit. But big picture, when you guys see a project, it is high level and it's really focused on the site design and the land use. Kind of that differentiation between you guys as the planning commission, right? You're not making building regulations. You're not reviewing a building code regulation. Super high level from a land use decision, is that use allowed there? Yes or no, we tell you that. And have the impacts been mitigated? Now, the planning staff does all the technical work. And again, we know the code, or at least we use ChatGPT to tell us what the code says. Just kidding, no, we don't do that. We are subject matter experts on all these things. And if we're not subject matter experts, we, read the code and learn as we go. But that's also looking at the traffic study and the drainage study and all those things. Now, the building staff doesn't look at our zoning applications because, again, they're looking at the building itself, very different from the land use. So from your perspective, you are very high level. And again, read the staff report, listen to the public comments, read the conditions of approval and say, from a land use decision, have the impacts been mitigated? Now, conditions of approval, this is always an interesting one. Staff puts conditions on a project, and then a lot of times it will come before you guys and you will add conditions as well. So a lot of times it'll go to a building permit and we'll say, whoa, whoa, whoa. on the conditional use permit or the major deviation, it showed a chain link fence. but it's out of building permit now, and it shows like a masonry wall. What happened here? But again, we go back, we read the staff report, we read the conditions of approval. We require every project that comes before you, when they submit for a building permit, they have to submit their decision letter, and they have to say how they have changed the site plan or the project to meet all of those conditions. So if you guys said, I don't want a 6-foot-tall wood fence, instead we're going to condition that it's a masonry wall, we would catch that at building permit, because we know, because they've submitted their decision letter, and it says how they've addressed all of our issues. The big thing here is, when you're adding conditions, again, make sure it's something that ties back to a fact, something measurable. The worst thing we get is sometimes at council meetings, they're like, well, if you could just look into this issue and address it if possible. I'm like, okay, check. So that's not measurable. It makes it very tough for us to have to make some unenforceable decision. You guys are, I would say, a little bit better about not doing that, and hopefully that's because you've all been trained enough to say, again, how do we enforce something that's fluffy and can you make it pretty? No, I need to know exactly what pretty means to you. And the other thing we don't want to see is if you add conditions that aren't specific to the project. We get in a lot of trouble when we say, traffic's bad. 2 blocks away, it would really help if you put in a traffic light. Now, there's no nexus between that traffic light 2 blocks away in this project, but you just feel that it would help traffic. Don't do that. It has to specifically be connected to this project. If that traffic study said the traffic from this In-N-Out burger is going to greatly push traffic out 2 blocks, we'd say, okay, there's a connection there, and they're recommending a traffic light 2 blocks away. But generally speaking, we don't see a lot of that. Now, we also want you to be reasonable and say, the spaghetti bowl is a mess. This apartment project is going to make it worse. I think you should fix the spaghetti bowl. You got to make it actually relatable and proportionate to the project. So make sure that whatever the mitigation is, it's proportionate to what they're doing. Again, the big things that we look at from a zoning perspective, it's all very easy. I feel like it's like cut and paste, right? Every project we look at, whether it's an industrial project or housing or a Taco Bell, all right, where's the access? What kind of lights are you putting on your building? Are you operating 24 hours a day? Where's the noise coming from? So all of those things are unique with each project, but it's all the same stuff that we look at, right? We mitigate the impacts. What I don't want is somebody to say, well, I have to make a finding that this, meets environmental standards. I think you should do a NEPA and CEQA review because that is my, understanding of what environmental means. Like in Nevada, there is no NEPA and CEQA. That's a California thing. So don't add those kinds of conditions. You have to tie it back to something in our zoning code that we can say, they have a wetland. That's an environmental issue. They're going to have dust because they're doing a rock crushing facility. How have they mitigated dust, right? Those are things that we can control. So keep that in mind. Don't do these one-off random conditions that you just feel or that again, chat GPT to an answer and that's what it came up with. Don't do that. Tie it back to something factual that's specific to our zoning code. Now, the big complaint we get is, well, what was submitted at the conditional use permit level has changed since it came in for a building permit. Let's talk about that. Now, can you think of any warehouse project that's come before you where you guys got to look at the inside of the building? You looked at how tall the racks were, where the bathrooms were, what color the floor was, where they were storing their paint. No, you don't look at that at the time of a conditional use permit. That is something that's done in a building permit. So we get a lot of complaints of, well, how come they have, diesel generators? Again, we don't regulate how many diesel generators you have. You can have as many as you want. But if we regulated noise, you have to make sure it stays within the noise level. If you want a diesel generator at your house, have at it. And there are regulations in terms of, how loud they can be, specs for how much, emissions they can have. We don't regulate that. That's all done through a number of different departments. So know that, it's not some rogue diesel generator that nobody got, nobody looked at, nobody approved. All of that has many, many levels of review. But the big thing that you're looking at is on the outside of the building, You again look at parking and landscaping, lighting and fencing. So if something changes between that conditional use permit and the building permit, and we say, whoa, 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 you took out 50 trees. Now, code requires those 50 trees. We wouldn't kick him out and say, go back to the planning commission. We'd say, revise your building permit to meet code and meet what you said you were going to do. That's a normal process. We get that quite a bit. A lot of times, when somebody submits for a conditional use permit, a lot of times they change architects or engineers. And so when they actually come forward with the building permit, maybe they didn't review all the requirements, and so things change. And again, if they can't go back and design it to the way it was supposed to be, the way that we approved it, we say you either have to make the change or go back and amend it. Now, what if it's something simple like, you showed these really pretty renderings and it was a khaki building. Love khaki. Your building permit, it's a gray. I don't think that's the same project. Remember, we don't regulate paint color. If you want to paint it blue, pink, green, we don't regulate that. What we do regulate is building articulation. We have standards that say you have to have windows, you have to have pop-outs, all those things. So again, from a public perspective, they see these nice 3D renderings and they see palm trees and they see trees that are 30 feet tall and they're like, that's not what you built. Of course not. Nobody builds something with palm trees in Nevada, in Reno, and nobody puts a tree in that's 30 feet on day one. So this perception from the public of what the pretty picture that they showed me is not what got built. We go back to the code, right? On their pretty picture, they showed 30 trees. Building permit, they put in 30 trees. Another 50 years, it might look pretty. So there's this kind of balance between the public understanding, don't believe pretty renderings, they're nice, but don't believe them. Goes back to code. And then performance standards. Noise is a big one, right? So the diesel generator conversation. We're like, man, they didn't talk about diesel generators in their conditional use permit. No, they don't, right? All kinds of businesses have diesel generators. Pretty much every hospital, casino, Walmart, houses. A lot of people have diesel generators. We don't have a standard on whether or not you can have them. So we don't ask for that information. Again, if you want to put it in, just make sure you can stay within our noise requirements. Okay, you guys ready?
Can I ask a question before we go to the
Yes.
Commissioner Jockman, before we go to the quiz? Okay, so this is the question I'm trying to ask here is the toughest issue for me, and you can refer to it as in a number of ways where you have homes next to a busy road. I always say it's the functional class. You guys have heard me say this. And I'm going to use kind of stat as an example where you have an application that's before you. They want to put homes, it's dirt, let's say. They want to put homes on a higher functional class road. And you can see that, well, okay, we may be making all these legal findings at this time, but we're on a higher functional class road. And I can see the friction 10 years down the road for the city if an industrial project comes in further down a higher functional class road when if I were to just, be like many citizens complain, I would want a higher use for that land along the busy road. I don't necessarily want this, but I can't see a legal basis to deny the application before us. What, if anything, can we do as a planning commission to help prevent those situations from occurring? Because those applications lead to 20 years down the road, the fault line where people think that they own McCarran, they think they own Stead or, Veterans, and they don't actually. They chose to buy a house next to a busy road. That's at the fault line of when these things become contentious. What, if anything, can we do when we get applications like that?
And
how should we navigate that?
That's a tough one because you can't have a crystal ball and say it potentially could be bad in the future, so I'm going to vote no. But what you can do is say you're on a busy road. Let's mitigate the impacts of that. We know there's going to be noise. We're probably at some point going to need maybe a traffic light as you're pulling out, but it's not warranted yet, and the traffic study shows it's not warranted yet. But again, you have to look at each project on a case by case and say, is this what it's zoned for? If it's zoned for residential, that makes it very, very tough to deny it as well. Just make sure they've designed it, that it meets all of the requirements. And we see that, everywhere throughout the city, we have that problem where, again, if we could plan a city from scratch and it was built that way, it would be great. but the market plays havoc on, zoning. 1 minute, housing is where the market's at. The next minute, housing's not where it's at. It's all about industrial. I mean, you go back to the Great Recession, as we call it, when housing prices dropped. Remember, housing was booming in like the 2008, 2009. You had to get a lottery to even think about getting a house. Housing was crazy. And then the market tanked for housing, and housing was oversaturated. People couldn't get rid of their houses. And then things changed, and industrial started booming. Okay, well, all these properties that were zoned for residential that weren't built with anything then changed to industrial. Those are things that are tough, for any city to anticipate because it's constantly going to ebb and flow. Who would have thought Dutch Bros would be a thing? We thought Starbucks had crazy lines. Starbucks is nothing compared to Dutch Bros or In-N-Out or Chick-fil-A. But 10 years ago, we hadn't even contemplated that drive-throughs would be insane like that. But again, we just, we try to do better and try to anticipate the impacts. Schools is the other big one. The way that schools are really booming right now, we hadn't had a school built in over a decade, and then we have money for schools through a big bond that was passed. And now we have all these new schools being built, and we're realizing we have to design them differently because people are now dropping their kids off. People aren't walking to school. It just completely changes the way we design. But again, we're keeping up. We're cool. We're watching the trends, right, Mike? and we learn from our mistakes. We make a ton of mistakes in planning. But as we see, we have to stop putting industrial next to residential without good buffers, right? We have to look at school drop-off and pickup. We have to anticipate when Chick-fil-A comes, you're going to need enough room for 60 cars. We know that. So we just have different regulations now than we did, even a year ago. Okay.
Sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
On that point, mitigate traffic effects.
Mm-hmm.
This comes up all the time. And some people think that you're supposed to prevent all traffic. Some people think you just have to limit the effects of the traffic. What do you think?
You have to be able to show, are you increasing your level of service? And you always typically are, right? If you need a traffic study, you're having more traffic. Are you addressing your impacts? Meaning, do you have to put in a middle turn lane or a decel lane or an acceleration lane? Or do you have to put in a traffic light, maybe a roundabout? That's really where we rely on the traffic engineers because they are supposed to be the subject matter experts. And our engineers double check and say, yep, they made all the right assumptions. Our other big challenge with that is that projects come and go like crazy. Half the stuff that you guys vote on never gets built. And so if we said, well, I know, but 10 years ago this was planned, yeah, but it didn't get built. But it might come back. That's also the hard part is we have to mitigate your project at the time of development. And again, that's one of those things where it would be great if we could say everybody had to put in 4 lanes and traffic lights and, but again, just for your little section of the road, that doesn't work either. So they have to just mitigate enough of their increased traffic.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so fun case study for you guys. Bottle manufacturing. I don't know if you realize this, but they use a ton of water. Ridiculous amount of water. Now, we normally don't ever ask how much water they're going to need, except we have this project of regional significance trigger for water. So if they have more than, 635 acre-feet of water, they have to go to regional. So if somebody came to us with a bottle manufacturing project, a conditional use permit, and they're within that threshold, so they're not, 635 acre-feet, maybe the question came up, well, how much water are you going to need? 600 acre-feet. I don't even know what that means. Give me a comparison. Keystone Data Center. You know how much water Keystone Data Center needs? 2 acre-feet. A bottle manufacturing company needs 600 acre-feet. Widely different. That's equivalent to 800 homes. Now, do we as staff have the ability to deny it based on how much water they're going to need? It's a tough one, guys.
There's not enough facts in the question.
If somebody came to you and said, I want to do a bottle manufacturing company, somebody in the audience said they use a ton of water, you guys should ask, right? Say the audience is saying, I'm really concerned they're gonna soak up all the wells, there's not gonna be any water left for anyone's house, that's equivalent to 800 homes. Do you have the ability to deny the project because they're
So-
using a lot of water?
Can I ask a question of that question you're asking? Isn't that when, like, the land use attorneys will start saying arbitrary and capricious, because you're then asking what the water is used for?
Yes and no. I guess it goes back to, does Reno have the ability to regulate water?
Is there like a will serve letter from Tumwa?
Tumwa regulates the water. And they can say, yeah, we've got tons of water. It comes in a pipe. It doesn't come from the groundwater. It comes in a pipe. And we give you, Tumwa gives you the ability to buy water rights, and then you can operate your plant. So know that when this water discussion comes up, we generally don't ask how much water you're using because we don't have any purview over it, right? We have purview over sewer, that's a Reno thing, and storm drain, that's a Reno thing, but we don't regulate water. If Tumwa's not willing to give you water, then that's a no-go. You can't build anything if Tumwa says no. But
Would it be relevant if they're pushing through 600 acres of water and then that is ending up in,
it all ends up in the sewer.
is that an issue that?
That would go back to, they would provide a sewer study to show how much sewer they're gonna need. And we would say, do we have capacity at whatever treatment plant that is? And if the answer is no, we then have the ability to say, as staff, we can't support this because we don't have enough capacity at our sewer treatment plant. A good example is the Reno Stead treatment plant. Right now, we have capacity, but if somebody like this came in, we would probably have to tell them no. Or we just say, no, nobody else can ever build again until we're done, right, putting in all the infrastructure. And we are working on an infrastructure plan, but it's a couple years before it's gonna be built. But when we've had conversations with the bottle manufacturing companies out instead, and we said, we can't guarantee that we're gonna be able to provide sewer. Like, if you wanna sit on this for 5 years and come back and talk to us, we should be good. But today, we couldn't support it. But not because of water, it would be because of sewer, which we have control over.
So the answer is no.
Correct. All right. Rock crushing facilities. These are fun as well. We don't get a whole lot of them. Let's say a rock crushing facility came and they want to operate 24 hours a day. That's typical. And they're next to residential development.
This isn't a recent intake, is it, at the city that we should get ready for? Not looking forward to this one. Yeah.
So based on that information, could you deny it based solely on noise concerns?
I would think that part of what the staff is giving us is about the lighting, noise, times of days that they can do it, days of weeks that they usually provide that information. And so I look to that. It wouldn't necessarily be solely on noise.
And that's a great answer. So we do have a quantifiable measurement of noise, right? If you're next to residential, we have a number that says you cannot exceed 65 decibels of noise. That's in our code. You could point to that all day. We would make them do a noise study as part of the review. I don't know how a 6-foot tall chain link fence wall is not going to block the noise. So that would not mitigate the impacts. Some trees would not mitigate the impacts. We would make them do a noise study, and 99% of the time, we're like, we can't get to yes because you are exceeding 65 decibels, even based on your noise study. So that is easy for us to say no to. You may come back and be like, I think, if they put in some really tall, maybe some columnar trees, I think we can get there. And that's totally your prerogative. Just know, again, if it's, you think it would impact, make the noise less, probably not great. Hard for us to defend when it goes to court. So noise is one of those things, like just because neighbors don't like noise is not a reason to deny something, but if we have something quantifiable that we can say, we know it's gonna be noisy, do a noise study, can you prove that you can keep it within the, allowed level?
And that's enforceable too, I assume, yeah.
Yep.
What if it's next to an animal shelter?
Oh, here we go.
Are the cats inside or outside?
It depends. Are they tabbies or are they? I'm just kidding.
I'm a dog person, so I'll move on. What happens when you have two competing experts, so to say. So the applicant has, hey, here's our noise study. Guess what? It's whisper quiet. You can't hear any of our rocks crushing. It's amazing. Is there, somebody, I mean, how does that work? When we're sitting here and hearing competing evidence, do we just say, well, they've got the expert, and this is just, maybe the public is just saying, come on, it's rocks crushing. We're going to hear it. I mean, how do we weigh all that?
So we would require an actual noise expert, right? Somebody who's licensed, who can stamp a plan, their license is on the line. And we question things all the time in reports. I mean, traffic reports in particular, we'll go back and be like, you know what, I think you need to run the model again based on this or this. Something like that, we would really question to say, we know it's going to be loud. Putting in a 6-foot tall wall is not going to buffer the noise. I question how your data supports that. And we would work, and that we have the ability to say, we cannot get to yes on this because this study is bad. We have some civil engineers that are horrible. And we're like, how did you design this, to drain correctly? Like, we know this is going to flood. And so we question that. We make them go back and we do it again, sometimes 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 times. But that's where I think our kind of technical expertise and just years of doing it also helps.
But I think that kind of goes back to the public and even us not understanding that process that you have been through to get to that point.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question about, in the case of that type of application, my head immediately goes to air quality from disruption and also groundwater tables, right? So, but I also recognize we're going to be at an entitlement, and it's not obvious to me if I should be thinking about those things at that stage. So it's a mine, it's a quarry, there's activity that's clearly going to get into the air that could be detrimental, right? So that's where my head's at. It could be detrimental to the neighbors for air quality. Are we going to be presented with a study that shows mitigation efforts that are required into perpetuity? How would that look?
Yeah, and this is one of those, anything with air quality, we work with the health department, they regulate air quality. So we would have them submit a review and a letter of, here's the requirements. And they're pretty strict. If you exceed their air quality requirements, they are on you and they are charging money.
Okay, so you're talking about recourse after approval there, in that case.
Yes, and so we would say you have to do an air quality permit. That would be one of the conditions, right? It's a requirement. And so they'd have to come up with a plan and submit that to the air quality, through the health department, because we don't regulate air quality, but there's other agencies that do.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, one more. Hypothetically, let's say somebody came in with a big PUD for 4,000 homes. So you as the planning commissioner are getting all these comments about traffic. So can you deny the project based on 4,000 homes? That's going to cause a lot of traffic.
No.
No, but you could deny it based on whether or not they're meeting the applicable level of service standards and potentially not mitigating their impact.
Perfect.
Yep.
I feel like you guys.
I feel like you might be a traffic engineer.
And traffic is one of our bigger challenges as the community grows, but we really rely on, here's our level of service that the city has deemed as acceptable. And, yes, it's more traffic, whatever the project is. Are you still within that threshold of what's considered, acceptable? And you may say, I drove by last weekend and it was crazy. How can you say that's acceptable? We rely on that traffic study to say what are the traffic patterns today. We also get a lot of projects that don't test for traffic numbers during school. And that completely skews the numbers, right? Because if you're near a school, of course there's going to be more traffic. So we try to catch those things. Sometimes we get applications that did the traffic study a year prior. So then we really have to question, right? Like, what was going on? Was there construction going on? Are there new developments there that weren't there, when this traffic study was done? But yeah, you definitely shouldn't deny a project just based on traffic, but read the report, right? Are they willing to mitigate, put in all the, the lanes and the streetlights and everything that's required? Or are they pushing back and saying, no, we're just gonna do this and we're not gonna do that other recommendation? We would condition that whatever's in the traffic report, they have to do. Okay, that is it. Yeah.
Does staff ever engage with planning commissioners when they veer off into
Just your microphone.
Thank you.
I would say yes and no. I think, Mike and our attorneys try and give you guys as much discretion to ask questions. But we're also cautious of like, be careful, if you're, especially when you're saying no to a project. A lot of times the attorneys will say, I need you to say why you're saying no. And so put it on the record. So they'll clarify, like, we know this is likely gonna go on appeal, potentially gonna go to a lawsuit, make a clear record of why you're saying no. And on some of the conditions too, over the years, we've had some planning commissioners that just add crazy conditions of approval. If the applicants, agree to them, I'm like, you guys kind of did it to yourself because you didn't stand up and say no. But they also have the right to appeal a condition. So from staff, we're like, again, is it enforceable? Is it something that we can send code enforcement out? Or is this just I want you to look at this and then think about it and then maybe redesign it. No, don't do that. Give us something black and white that we can say, yep, they've done it, or no, they haven't.
I have it's not really a question. One thing that, again, the public, I had somebody call me, I was just talking to somebody last week, and they were like, I thought there was an In-N-Out going here. And I'm like, okay. Yes, we approved an In-N-Out and a Starbucks for that corner on Kitski and, I can't even remember where it is right now.
Plum.
Yeah, Plum and Kitski. And so I think that people also don't understand that timeline. I also have a bunch of people asking when the Costco's opening up, and so I'm like, that is like, we're not there yet. And so I think it's just important, again, kind of going back to helping the public understand like what the time frame, like obviously the city has zero, except for the fact that they have X number of years to complete this. There's not a lot you can do to move things along, or, and we don't certainly understand why In-N-Out hasn't opened up yet. I'm sorry, people. Sorry.
They're waiting for the lettuce situation to calm down.
Well, that's valid, but we should let the public know that. But again, I think that these are just some things that we can help, and then I don't think there'd be as much contention, especially with crazy people who like Chick-fil-A and In-N-Out. Whatever.
Yeah, anytime you see the word NDOT or Union Pacific Railroad, add 3 years to your timeline.
Okay, there you go. Sounds good.
And NDOT controls Plum Lane.
Don't they like In-N-Out? No, I'm just kidding. But you see what I'm saying.
Yes.
It is so, I get questions like that. Like, I thought you approved that. Where is it? I'm like, I don't know.
All right, anything else?
This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks
Angela.
for staying till 9:30. I know it's a long night and hard to keep the brain cells going.
Thank you very much for staying with us as well and giving that presentation.
Yeah.
I really appreciated it. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our items under business items. We now go to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Commissioner Gonfantini, can I look to you for that one?
Of course, the last meeting for the Regional Planning Commission was July 23rd. A new election for chair and vice chair was held. An RPC training segment was provided to the Regional Planning Commission members. Various regional plan conformance reviews were presented and adopted. The TMRPA staff presented a quote-unquote report card process that they're engaging in internally for better feedback. And the TMRPA held a data center engagement community conversation today. The next meeting will be August 27th.
Thank you, Commissioner Gonfantini. Item G, future agenda items.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Item H, public comment. Madam Clerk?
We do not have any public comment registered for this item.
Thank you. There's no one in chambers. We'll close public comment. Item I, adjournment. Can I get a motion?
Commissioner Williams, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.